Recording in progress.
Oops. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the regularly stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. Today's date is Thursday, February 6, 2025. This is to formally advise that, as required by General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and the Act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, the Yarmouth Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting at the date and time noted above. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided above. Again, this is the Yarmouth Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, February 6th, 2025. Our first order of business is a request for the determination of applicability. This is David C. and Marie K. M. Melagrani, 1 Seaside Village Road. It's a proposed addition on posts supported by sonotubes within land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Hi, good evening. I'm Stephanie Sequin with Ryder and Wilcox, representing David and Marie Melaragni, and they are the owners of the property at 1 Seaside Village Road. It's a half-acre lot located within land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's an A zone here. The base flood elevation is 11. The existing grades around the building, it's a very flat lot. The elevation of the ground surrounding the building is roughly elevation 8, so the entire property is well within the flood zone. The elevation of the existing first floor is 11.2, so just a little bit above the base flood elevation. There's an existing 3-bedroom house with an attached deck, patio, detached shed. There's a circular paved drive in the front. There's in the back of the house crushed stone that surrounds the deck and the perimeter of the foundation. And what's being proposed here now is a 20.5 feet by 16 foot addition off the back of the house. It's a single story. It will be constructed on posts supported by sonotube footing, so no foundation. There will be no impediment to floodwaters. The access to the work area, well, the included construction notes and a construction protocol. The construction vehicles will remain in the front yard on the existing driveway. A mini excavator or some other similar sort of equipment will be used to excavate for the sonotubes. If necessary, the existing septic system is in the front yard, and that will have to be protected to prevent any damage from construction equipment. On the proposed addition is largely within existing lawn and or patio, deck or stone area. So there's no trees, no shrubs, no significant vegetation that needs to be removed for this. There will be a dumpster placed in the front yard. All construction and demolition debris will be deposited into the dumpster. Upon completion of the construction, stone will be placed along the roof drip line to contain roof runoff, and the disturbed areas will be reseeded with a native grass mix.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from the commission? Anybody? Joe, anything? Anybody in the audience have any questions or comments on this project? Is there anybody on Zoom? If so, raise your hand digitally. I see none. Unless there's further discussion from the board, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2?
So moved. Second.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. We're off to a good start.
All right, our Our next order of business is a notice of intent, Lighthouse Realty Trust 1033 Great Island Road, a proposed bank stabilization with sandbags and reconstruction and expansion of concrete seawalls within a coastal bank, coastal beach, and the velocity zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Bob Perry, Cape Cod Engineering. I am sitting with the applicant, Terry McDonald, trustee of the Lighthouse Realty Trust. Got a little feedback here. Green cards for collecting those.
You may want to just push the microphone a little bit further away, that's all.
I believe we're also being joined by Ian Peach of Wilkinson Ecological and Gregor McGregor and possibly Caroline Smith of Gregor and Legere attorneys. They said they would be present on Zoom, so they may be in the background. So here we are at 1033 Great Island Road. We filed a notice of intent for several project features, and I want to just introduce those to you briefly. We have a beach with a coastal bank and an upland. It's fairly typical. The beach deposit, however, is somewhat established with stone groins, stone breakwaters, and probably dating from the 50s, a set pattern of low elevation concrete walls. And I just want to point out, in the notice of intent, we provided a photograph, and I want to point out that the efficacy of those walls has been demonstrated to be very effective, and it is those walls that represent one of the features of this project, where there's about 300 feet of concrete wall. Some of it just needs to be, patched and pointed, and about 66 feet, I think 66 feet is listed in the notice, is damaged severely enough that it would need replacement. And we've included in the notice of intent the reasoning having to do with such things as substantial improvement. It's a fairly small proportion of the whole. There is a segment that heads inland on the west, which is something we might call a return. Back when these were built, there were no property lines here, and now, in 1989 or so, 87, 88, a open space division was created on Great Island, and there's a lot line there. So when the tide surges, what we've noticed is that the low crested walls will allow the beach grass to grow, and if they are closed bays, the water will not rush back and out and scour the land. So on the west, we are proposing what would be called a return. We believe there was probably a return there. There's a lot of concrete going to the west, and many of the walls on this section of Great Island have that same kind of feature. So we're proposing to reestablish that. The second feature here is, if you've visited the site, and I think you did, we had these discrete locations where the bank cleaved off in a rather open, stark erosion. It's directly related to the damaged walls, where, as in the notice, where the wall is damaged, rushing backwater lowered the beach, the water was able to get to the toe of the bank, and it collapsed the bank. So in those discrete locations, the applicant proposes a very light footprint remedy, which is biodegradable sandbags that would be a step up from what would be a loose fill reconstitution of those discrete eroded areas. So the premise is that the individual sandbags, which are effectively typical burlap hand-carried sandbags, would lay in there, and they will not withstand every storm, but they would withstand far better than loose fill. That whole area would be planted over after it is, dressed with those bags and a top coat of soil. We did put soil evaluations and grain size analysis in the notice of intent, so we know the bank is a silt loam with an underlying layer of coarse sand, and we provided a beach deposit analysis as well. So those are the engineering features. So once the wall network is repaired and it is refilled and planted, and the sandbag array is packed into the discrete eroded areas, the overall coastal bank is in need of management that is best handled by an expert ecological company, and there's a number of them on the Cape. We all know them well. The one selected in this instance is Wilkinson Ecological. And Ian Peach will speak to the work that they propose on the bank itself. Let me touch on the work protocol. As I said earlier, we have a light footprint. The upland is a heavy, very durable turf of sheep fescue, natural native fescues. And there's a fringe of coastal plant community growth, rugosa rose, sort of a wind-blown bayberry, possibly some invasives, but not in any great quantity. And that's right at the top of the bank, and it ranges from about 10 feet thick to 4 feet thick. Everything going down to the beach would be lifted over and lowered to the beach. So there's no activity near the top of the bank that would disturb any of that vegetation that's at the top of the bank. And the equipment that would be lowered would be very minor. Many of the sand management jobs that I've seen, people use a dingo, very small track machine. That's the item scale that we're talking about, and possibly a small, very small mini excavator. If you've seen some of those minis, they almost look like toys, but they're rubber tracked, very small. Sand would be hoisted out over and deposited in the same manner. And there's plenty of equipment that can sit on the turf and deposit that sand where it needs to go in the area that's got no vegetation for use where it's needed. So we put a lot into the notice of intent that relates to the performance standards with regard to the beach. We have a beach that is not natural. We are proposing to repair and in certain cases replace, in the case of the return area, to create a feature on here that's just a responsible thing to do. Otherwise, you'll have the same hydraulic action that we're trying to control. And it is, in our opinion, consistent with performance standards for coastal beaches simply because we have the existing features on the beach. It's all above the plane of mean high water, and it's important for me to tell you that in the long course of time, where tidal jurisdictions do change, all those stone groins, the stone breakwaters, the concrete walls are all licensed by Chapter 91 for maintenance under license number 197 that was issued in 1976. So the applicant is intending to maintain those structures before they get any worse. I think I've touched on most of what we have in our notice of intent. Ian, I believe, is on Zoom.
He's here, yeah.
And he can relate to you what the Wilkinson program is for the Coastal Bank. Leon, take it away.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, Ian, for just so you know, we asked that consultants actually show up in person to make presentations. It sounds like you're coming through okay right now, but the reason we have done this in the past is because we often have issues with the consultants calling in and then not being able to hear what they say. So, is there any objection from the board if he goes through with the?
No objection for me.
Nope. Oh, it's good.
Okay, so we'll allow that to go ahead. If we start losing connectivity, then we may have to do something different and maybe continue. But so if you'd like to go ahead with your presentation, then.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate you allowing me to speak. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. For the record, Ian Peach from Wilkinson Ecological Design, representing the project. I would have my camera on, but I don't think that feature's available right now on this Zoom webinar, so just going to count on you hearing my voice. We've worked with the team here, Bob and Terry, the homeowner sitting before you, and done a careful assessment of the site, and we're looking for a light touch, as Bob spoke to. So we've come up with some straightforward interventions that we really are targeting to benefit the stability of this coastal bank and the ecological integrity of the resource area. So these acts can be broken down pretty simply. They include a dense planting of American beach grass. With the area where we want the plant to be real dense, we're at 12 inches on center. Where it doesn't need to be quite as dense and we can have the beach grass run into each other, we're at 24 inches on center. This is to improve the stability on this very exposed, wind-blown coastal bank with this living buffer against sea level rise, wave energy, and erosion. In addition, we identified on the bank 5 Japanese black pines. This is a non-native state listed as likely invasive and really a threat to that native plant community on the bank and the success of beach grass establishing. So to speak to the ecological integrity, the main move is to remove these 5 Japanese black pines as shown on our restoration plan clearly. We leave the stumps in the ground, let them decompose over time. All of the beach grass planting and the removal of the Japanese black pines are done by hand. Again, very light touch, but with big benefits to the coastal bank and the resource. So these simple acts of the native planting, the invasive plant management, these are going to work in tandem with the sand that Bob was speaking to, the nourishment, the walls. So we have a comprehensive approach of coastal interventions that are looking to find that light touch path for this coastal resource. So I'm happy to speak to our interventions and what we've seen on site, but I wanted to make sure I was just focusing on those moves that we're proposing this evening. Thank you again for letting me speak.
Thank you. Anything else, Bob?
I think I summarized it well enough. I think it's important that we try to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll turn it over to questions from the board. I just want to start, it's like, when was the house, when was the dwelling built?
1991,
1991?
right. So
So how are you getting around that
Well,
nasty
78 rule?
for coastal bank issue?
Well, we're not armoring the coastal bank. We're repairing these features that are on the beach or in the area that, well, we're not going to say that the definition of coastal beach is from the low tide line to the first man-made structure. We're basically saying, we're not going to argue that. We have a beach, but we're on the beach.
But you've got the return, right? You have that return that you're, the so-called return that you're putting back, that's
Right. We're terminating that at the toe of the coastal bank.
coming into the toe, right?
Yeah. Basically trying to reestablish the tier. It's approximately 2 feet, which has apparently, from looking at the behavior of that shoreline, successfully held the bank when it is vegetated.
And so I guess my other question with that then is if you're putting a return wall, I mean, we have an issue that because we have a regulation that says we don't allow walls to be built in a V zone.
Right.
You know, I mean, at the same time, I guess my bigger concern then is if you have a wall that's exposed, that's part of the return, then how are you going to prevent, and what's gonna stop wave action from coming in, slapping up against the wall, and then being deflected back into the first of all, off the property, and second of all, into the resource area?
Well, we felt that the inclusion of that return is basically the only responsible thing to do. If you leave that array there without a return, it has the potential to exacerbate what we're observing as a trend, where overtopping water rushes to the west, and there is no plateau to the west. The applicant is recognizing his obligation to periodically nourish this area. I think this is they've certainly done some management over here, but this is, I think, the first effort to manage this area since those walls were heavily damaged last December and January, 23, 24. And they were looking at the damage. They contacted me in summer and told me what they wanted to do, and we've looked at it with Wilkinson and the owner's input. He's in construction, and I think it's the only responsible thing to do with respect to maintaining this array.
Why can't you replace it with some sort of soft solution like cory logs or something, and let the area build? You're gonna provide sand anyhow behind it. You're gonna plant the area.
I think
Why not use a softer solution to that then?
well, the soft idea of, say, a core sand lift or that kind of idea, because the rolls don't work here in this type of environment. It's too much energy. It would have to close onto the bank. And the way it was examined was to see how much of this concrete array remains off to the east. There's a lot of it. And it made sense to the applicant to seek to repair it and to repair it responsibly. So that's why the return is there. You could do a return so-called with a burrito or a sand lift, but it would be a discontinuation. It just made sense to keep it in kind with what's there.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, actually, I have a question. So you mentioned that the scarping was primarily due to the failed, the wall where it has kind of failed. And I guess I'm wondering if the plan is to repair that wall, add sand and plant it, why is the need for the sandbags? Why couldn't it just be the loose fill structure?
Because there's going to be events that come over this, and some form of buttress of a soft nature was called for, at least in our opinion. And the applicant, who is in construction, wants to do some of this work himself, and the sandbag option was discussed. We reviewed it. We said it's superior to loose compacted fill that would be planted, because the bags themselves can be planted. Some cover soil can be planted. But if you do have the unlucky event of a fairly low intensity but high course tide storm, you would withstand that. Your fill would not just liquefy and dissolve and float away. And that's the reason for the bags.
Sorry, I guess I'm not following that logic. If the sandbags can withstand those higher velocity storms, then what is the need to repair the wall?
It's a frequency issue. The observations have shown us that your moon tides, strong southwesters, maybe some southeasters, have surcharged the low wall, but with the time taken to get a good crop of beach grass growing there, that deposit withstands scour. And it's the analogy that I use, and I've looked at the shore for a very long time, and when I see good, healthy salt marsh, I very rarely see natural coastal bank erosion. It's almost that same principle of having a stratified tier of vegetation, and the walls happen to be there, and they happen to be providing that tier function. And it's really a frequency issue. If we did not have the walls, I believe we would have a much more open, sloping beach right up to the base of the coastal bank. And I think the coastal bank would be eroding in full. That's my position on that location based on the observations that I've been making.
Okay.
Did you want to?
Can I say something?
Yeah, if you again, just identify yourself for the.
Terry McDonald, sorry. So this picture, I'm a layman, I'm not an engineer, but my observation is that where the wall isn't, if I could do this, where the wall is intact and this is stable, that is stable. It's a system that all works together So I don't think you can do one and not the other. To me, I don't know who designed it, who built it, it's way before my time, but it's a system that is remarkably effective at stabilizing the bank. Where it is intact, where it's not, it doesn't work. So that's my answer to your question about why it's all together.
Well,
It's a system.
Yeah, so I guess the question in that case then is the sandbags, because it's currently stable as is without sandbags, so,
No, if you stand there, you just see it fall. You just see the wind taking it, you just see it. Here, where do you mean it's stable?
where the wall isn't broken.
So the wall is broken right where this person's standing?
Yep.
Right here, and the scarp is right behind it? Mm-hmm. And that scarp with is falling every day, you'll just stand there and watch it fall because of the wind.
Yeah. So, yeah, my question is, what is the need for both the wall and the sandbags? Could it not just be one or the other?
So for me, layman, it's a system that works all together. So we have to stabilize the damage that was done by losing the wall. So we stabilize the wall, we stabilize this shelf, and then we stabilize that. And then we have a stable bank. But that's me.
May I just interject that the sandbags are burlap, and there's rivules, preferential drainage. I don't think there's a lot of runoff coming off, but we do have an open area. There's a nice fringe of vegetation at the top of the bank, so I don't think we're having any sheet flow or stream flow off the upland. But to just pack earth in there, I just think we'd be back there doing it again, because we can't predict what event will come in. But if the limit, for at least for the near term or several years while those bags decay, I think the remedy for a storm impact would be to shoot some soil just over the bank as a cover and plant it, versus the larger volume that would be necessary if it were to take a pretty good hit. So I didn't see the sandbags as being a huge interruption to the environment. I saw them as a kind of a safeguard. I mean, in the alternatives discussion that we had among ourselves, it was core sand lift at the base, but that operates as a lump that almost works like a mulch, and it would certainly be a buttress for the bank, and you'd fill above that. But something was needed there, and since the applicant was willing to go through packing sandbags in there, we're showing the sandbags, because they will be more durable and no more harmful than anything you could put in there. It's individual units, they're going to fill that void, and they are earth, not sand. We're proposing an agriculturally rich, consolidating soil, because we have that in the bank already.
Okay.
Well, I'll go to Paul and then to David.
Yeah, thank you for those explanations. So you just touched upon something I was wondering about. So there'll be new soil in a sense, all along the entire property line? Even that portion that the gentleman just showed?
No, only where those discrete eroded
Where it's
pockets are.
eroded. 'Cause, yeah,
if you
I
look
was out
close-
there and I don't remember, in that one area you showed that you described as being stable. You want to replicate that situation down the beach farther, and you're going to put sandbags in that area and soil along that. The plan here says provide soil along the base.
Yes.
It shows basically that area as well.
Right, the Wilkinson Group can speak to it, but in the apparent stable areas of the bank, there are, this is from the December and January storms of 2023-24. There's a minor scarp breaking out, and the Wilkinson crew would address at the very base of the bank, just to the west of the stairs, a few hot spots that are in there. You wouldn't see them on the plan. You see them unless you were really, really looking for them. But those would have soil replaced and they be planted. I know that's what the Wilkinson attention to the coastal bank is going to be doing.
So when I was out there, it's not those big chunks of soil that are falling.
That's what I'm speaking of in the sandbag context. Those open slides are proposed to be packed with hand-carried sandbags.
Okay, all right, and also that return, it seems to me, it kind of defies common sense to me, anyway, not having the depth of knowledge that maybe some folks do, but it looks like water comes in, it's gonna smash against that return, it's gonna do damage on the west, to the neighbor's property on the, as you would look at this plan to the left, I guess that's the west. You're saying that's not gonna happen?
Not to any great extent. It's a very low wall. It would be no higher than the ones that are there. And as it heads up the beach, it's going to become even less revealed. So it's a small cross-section. If you want to look at the turbulence and the scour and the complete, utter perturbation of that beach, include all of the stone breakwaters, all the stone groins, and the existing concrete that's there now. We concluded that adding that segment closed the bay, but would not in any significant way add to the potential scour when you look at all of what's going on that beach.
Okay, it's just that it seems like it might do that for this property, but it seems like it might affect the neighboring property. In my mind, as I envision a storm, and I envision water up against that, and envisioning velocity against that, and all that sort of thing.
Well, it's not going to be a foot high. I think it's going to be, there's rocks out there that are much bigger than
I
this
know
will
there,
be.
yeah,
The waves don't hit it this way.
along the edge.
The return is this way into the bank.
Okay.
So the waves go with the wall, it's not this way.
Isn't it depending upon the storm? Pardon?
I don't agree with that at all.
This is the return, right?
The return, I know what you're saying, but the return you're getting, especially in the summertime, you get predominant winds from the southwest, your waves are coming from the southwest. It comes in at an angle to the return.
We have a top of wall in the vicinity of elevation 5.2. The ground elevation as it approaches the coastal bank is getting to be about 5 to 6. So we're just trying to close the bay to minimum cross-section. And while I do a fair amount of work with seawalls, and I know there's always that concern for scour when you have a seawall. And seawalls are often tall, and they have significant cross-sections. This does not. And it is landward of an amazingly complex array of breakwaters and groins. And I believe it's the only responsible thing to do if you're going to restore the wall segments. You need to have that return. It just closes the bay.
You done, Paul? Yes, thank you, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
I have a couple concerns. Well, first of all, I totally understand why, can you put the picture back up? I'm sorry. I totally understand why you want to repair the wall to reconnect it. And, you know, what you said, I can see that working. But I cannot accept putting the return in. It's against our V-zone standards, and I just don't see allowing that to happen. So I would vote no on this particular presentation unless you got rid of the return, just to be upfront. Secondly, my question is, why sandbags and not fiber rolls to stabilize?
Good question. Let me speak to the first point, which I think is just, and you see a fair amount of me. I'm not argumentative, but we have to discuss these things. So when we think about the regulations with regard to V-zones and structures, I'm going to speculate that you see seawall applications that do come before you. And if you approve them, notwithstanding the 1978 rule, you would be most often approving something like a seawall in a velocity zone. And this is, you could try to define it as a seawall, but it's something different. We tried to name it. It's a low crested wall, and it's almost acting as an upper beach groin system. But I don't think we're outside the lines on your regulations if you approve seawalls. So, having said that, the fiber rolls in a location like this, they can be anchored, but they have no mass, and they would act with nothing but drag compared to their mass, and they would be loosened quickly. There are other fiber products, like what I call a sand lift, which is heavy gauge core blankets sewed together, which are accepted by DEP as soft solutions. And if we were talking core products, that's where I'd have to go here.
And how long are these bags that, how long do they last?
Sandbags.
Yeah.
I would speculate that they'd be fabric that would be confining soil for 2, maybe 3 years.
And then what happens after that?
They will
Hoping happens.
biodegrade, they're burlap.
No, I understand that, but what happens to where they are? Are you
Well,
hoping that
this is
everything
the-
establishes by then?
Well, the hope is that time is on the applicant's side, as with every soft solution on the coast, that adequate vegetation would take on that bank with consolidating soil. If you've ever tried to pull beach grass or fescue or other good quality coastal hardy grasses, I can't pull them out of the ground. And in combination with the lower tier, it is our premise that the circumstance you see in this foreground would be replicated down to the property line. And that's
Okay,
what I could say.
those are my questions.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, Ed, what is the height of the return in the front as it goes up towards the towards?
It holds level, 5.2 or so, and it would be even with the ground, and then it would probably be underground.
Okay, starting before the turn,
Yep,
where that line is, where it starts, let's say that's 13 feet.
yes, that's where it's
the height
mostly
there
exposed.
At the beginning of that 13 feet.
It's about 2 feet high there.
And at the corner,
I bet it's about the same, 2 feet.
and so as you go up, then it gets lower and lower.
Well, it's level, but the ground rises, so you see less and less of it.
Yeah. So the differentiation, I guess I would say, of small storms, large storms, you're going to be, with an extension like that, essentially trade-offs. If you get small storms, they're going to bounce off. If you get large storms, they're going to go up over it,
Right.
and they're going to eventually come around. Because particularly so I guess my feeling is it's total judgment here as to what's going to be more damaging. If you haven't been out there, or you're lucky, I mean, the storms are all different, even if they come from the same direction. So my feeling is that you're better off putting in a return, because I would bet that you're going to get more damage from your bigger storms. They're going to go in there and scour all that coming back.
Well, it's exactly our premise that the water trying to escape from that tier
Yeah.
will flow to a location of least resistance. Now, large storms, all bets are off, as we all know. This is an applicant coming before you with an idea to use what's there to the best of their ability, not to come in with a heavy construction crew to do a 2-tier, 6-foot-high core sand lift and change the character of the area. This is an effort to use what's here. I know the sandbags are a little novel, but they've been thought through with respect to the applicant's capabilities and his willingness to manage it. So I just think that for the observed behavior of what we had in that photograph, this is an applicant that's trying to do the minimum to replicate that.
Well, I don't have any knowledge of the rule on the end of a seawall like that. I don't know how tall they were looking at when they thought up that rule, how tall the seawall, how much water coming in straight into it. And I think that it should be our approach to judge
Yes.
what the damage, pluses and minuses, not just accept the rule because it was we don't know the background of the rule. Unless you, Ed, you happen to know more?
For the
Why
wall,
that- yeah,
or
why the end of it.
wall in the Z-zone?
Why they don't allow the return?
Well, it's not just necessarily the return, it's just the walls in a V-zone. Our other concern is that we don't want to encourage some sort of reflection or deflection of the wave energy onto either into another resource area that would cause erosion or onto somebody else's property. And I think in both these cases, you might see some of that. Whether it's extensive, I don't know. But I think it's certainly allowing it gives the potential to do both deflection into a resource, which could cause more erosion to the west. And that's because of reflected energy, and certainly it's going to be going off the property because the return is right almost on the property line.
Well, that's an interesting point, because could you put that return back earlier so it would be more on your own property and not on the owner of that property is the real estate?
Right, I believe it's an open space area. There are several things the applicant can do. One is to shift that return slightly. One is to provide information from the stewards of that open space parcel about their concern for it. It is land, when you think about the sediment process, that land's open space just to go. The applicant here is dealing with, I guess, a fairly earnest and comprehensive effort at coastal resiliency with the things that are already there. And nourishment, management of scour, should it occur, those are conditions the applicant can manage in an order of conditions. And I don't think this is I actually don't believe that this is a massive long-term project. I think this is an effort to return the area so that it's got stability. If we get the big hurricane, I don't think we're going to be talking about this, but
Would it be helpful if the homeowner association weighed in on that concern or not?
I mean, I do have a concern about that.
If-
So yeah, I mean, I would, and I would also I'm hoping that you might want to take some time just to maybe consider any other alternatives that you could do to a hardened structure like that. Because I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that, again, because it's such a small area.
Yeah.
I guess my question is then, if that's the case, it's only 1.5 feet or thereabouts, then why can't you do it with sandbags?
sandbags would move on the beach. I mean, there's obviously things that can be done as an alternate. It's just that by doing it with the same construction that we've got the wall out of, it's just continuous. It is simpler. It's not changing that much. As I've said, the cross-section, the protrusion, the potential for scour is very small because the structure is quite small, low. That's where I have to come from, because I can't imagine, it's not a bulkhead. It doesn't come up, or I shouldn't say, it's not like a huge seawall. That's where you do get scour. And nobody's going to say you don't, but this is a very de minimis circumstance for its cross-section.
Do we have a DEP number yet?
You don't.
Actually, we just got it about an hour and a half ago.
Kidding. You're ahead of me. Any comments?
Their comment was that it may require Chapter 91 filing.
And as I said, we have a Chapter 91 license. Remarkably, we're landward of the current high tide line, but apparently there may have been some jurisdiction from the 50s. I don't,
Joe, did you have any, you shook your head pretty positively on the,
Well, I agree with what the commission has said about the seawall potentially just shifting the wave action further west. But regardless, I mean, the performance standards in the velocity zone are there because they're based on performance. So I would assume that that's why we don't want to see any new seawall, any new hardscape put in there. And this return just looks like it's an expansion of what was there previously. So that's why we would like to see it removed. I do have other questions as well, but if you want to address
I
that.
just have a question, and I don't want to belabor this. I didn't think we had a file number. Ed, you mentioned the velocity zone concerns for structures or walls had to do with collateral damage to, I remember reading it as collateral damage to structures, but I thought it was structures. I did not know that your regulations talk about impacts to coastal resource areas.
I mean, that's one issue, and I think that it's certainly something we consider. You know, I think the other thing, and you know, we keep referring to this as like, oh, this is like any other seawall, but it's not a situation of a seawall. In that seawalls typically are tucked right up against
Right.
a bank or some other landform behind it.
Right.
And
It's
the
a strange one.
return is all, you know, it's all back in the, you know, buried in the ground. So this is a little bit different in that it is exposed, and it's exposed for a fair amount of run there. So I think this is not like a typical seawall situation, and we shouldn't be comparing it to that and saying, oh, well, how do you get around the seawall? Because this is not a seawall.
Right, I agree with you, and we made that point earlier. If this is half of it is under the beach, the applicant's going to Nourish, you can shoot sand right in here once or twice a year. We did not see, I'll be repeating myself when I tell you, but something that's this high off the beach isn't causing material problems for scour. It's no different than any of the rocks that are strewn all around here. Any loose rock on the beach is going to create a hole next to it from water variations in speeds and pressure. And I just never dreamed that this would be a scour concern.
Well, I mean, this is one issue, scour and deflection, but I guess my other, moving completely away from this side, I do have another question about the planting, especially the planting that as it's provided on the bank side, which is the 24-inch on center, which is also where the black pines, one of the Japanese black pines are. So my first question is, in that area, I mean, I see why you only want to do the beach grass in the tighter, smaller area down on, you know, further down on the beach, but on the bank, would there be a reason why we couldn't add some more diversity in planting along the bank?
Ian's on there, but I'm sure they can. Ian?
Yeah, through the chair, thank you, Ian Peach again. So we looked at that. Obviously, you know, we are big believers in diversity, biodiversity, but it's really that simplified approach. And with the exposure of this site, we really thought a nice, thoughtful, but with a high return intervention, without getting irrigation down on the beach and having super stunted maritime shrubs that we're replacing, would be to work with what's working, and that's American beach grass.
Okay, and are you thinking about trying to do any kind of replacement of trees then? I realize they're invasive plants, but they are trees. Would you would you be able to put some other type of native?
It's not something we've considered yet. I mean, I could understand mitigating for that, if that was a wish of the commission. I would not want to place them on this coastal bank, likely, again, with the condition. Potentially scrub oak would come to mind as a possibility, as something that may survive here. But we are open for working with the plant specification.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you'd necessarily have to replace trees on a bank, but
Yeah.
something above the bank would, I think that would be something that could easily be accomplished.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Anybody else?
One last small question. As I look at the return on that, and you've got the remains of the seawall that go out, and from that corner, how tall are those remains, you know?
They're laying down, they're damaged. I don't know that they are from a formation that might have been perpendicular, but they are off-site.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, oh, no, yeah, then they're basically, you can see there,
Some on the,
remember what I said,
Oh.
there were no lot lines when they were built, and we wanted to segregate the work from any neighboring property with minimal collateral impact.
Ed, question?
Yeah.
So, on your plan, in that section where the wall is broken, okay? It says concrete wall to be reconnected to replace, I guess, segments. But maybe the question was, well, how high are those replacements gonna be?
The same as the ones that are there.
And how high is that?
That's elevation 5.2 plus or minus. They're not quite perfect, but that's about 2 feet, 2.5 feet above the grade where they are now.
Okay, and then you have the return. Ask another question, but that's a
Yeah,
very.
the beach comes up and the return just kind of dives into it.
Yeah, and when you consider the returns, and consider the returns as one part of this project, basically, I don't know how to ask it, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important are they?
Very, because when water gets up onto that tier, it wants to run back. And if it can run to the west and continue to the west, it will scour just as it's doing now.
So water, in a storm, water, as I think has been stated, is gonna get way over those
Right.
things. So this is just kind of a normal, calm summer day, and it's high tide, and some water's gonna go in, and so, because it doesn't seem to, they could possibly be too protective in any kind of a disturbance, any kind of storm.
The photograph that was put up shows a very intensely established field of beach grass in that small, low tier.
Yeah, but those walls, how high are those walls there?
Those walls are approximately 18 inches to 2 feet high where you see them there.
Because I was out there, but I guess I didn't pay that much
It's
attention to how
approximately
high
that.
the
There's some
walls were.
snow, and the sand comes and goes on the seaward side, so there's a little bit of variation, but that was surcharged heavily. There's rack material piled up against the coastal bank, and it withstood the surcharge because it's level and it's vegetated. It can't get a rapid current, but when you go off to where the wall was damaged, there was a way for preferential flow to really dig it out, and it did. And so the premise here is to create the plateau level so that when water escapes from being surcharged, it's far more diffuse and not concentrated.
Okay, all right. I've asked all my questions.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Joe?
For the sandbags, is there a plan to stabilize them in any way? Like you said, it's, high-velocity waves coming in there sometimes, and anything to keep them from dislodging from each other from that,
Gravity, no,
just gravity?
yeah,
And the top layer of soil that,
right. Vegetation, once it establishes with roots.
Are we going to continue? Because
It's up to you. Do you want to take that opportunity, or do you want the vote? You want to
I
just call
will
a vote?
tell you, my take is, I have always considered projects in the first hearing before a committee to be somewhat introductory. I've been thinking about this and working with Mr. McDonald for 5 months, and you've talked with us about it for one night, and you've looked at it, done your homework, maybe for a week since we filed it. We have to talk among ourselves, I think, well, what you've said. And I think we just found out we had a file number. I wouldn't be looking for a vote right now. I think we should think about what you've said, ask you now if you have any recommendations. And then we would come to see you in a couple of weeks.
I mean, I think we were pretty clear as to what our concerns. You know, I mean, and if you're willing to take a time and think about it a little bit more too, and consider that, and if you come back with this exact same plan, I understand that too, because that's what you were looking to do in the first place. But I think that might be a good thing, so if you want to do a continuance for 2 weeks to the next meeting.
Yeah, and I'm hoping you would, in your thought
Maybe we'll do
process,
the
would
same-
think about what we've told you, and 2-week continuance, please.
Okay.
Before you do?
Oh, I'm
might have
sorry.
people out
Yeah, I
there.
need to go back to the audience. Is there somebody in the audience?
Oh, right.
That's why I'm here.
Anybody in the audience have any comments or questions on this? Anybody on Zoom? Oh, there's a hand. Gregor.
Good evening, thanks a lot. We appreciate all the time you spent before and during this hearing, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. We appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Gregor. Any further discussion among the board? No. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue this to February 20th?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, is there a second, David?
Yeah, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimous. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll do our thinking, and you can do your thing.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for their patience.
Good night.
What? No. We're getting there.
Yep.
So, the next one, you're gonna skip the next one?
Is Lynn out? No, she's not here.
Should we move it to the end and see if she comes?
Yeah, so the consultant for the next hearing is not in the audience right now. She's had some issues that she's dealing with, so she's trying to make it here, but if she's not, so what I'm going to do right now is just put that off and go right into the request for a certificate of compliance. And this is for SE 83-2374. Let's see, Marty Riley, 331 Union Street.
Can you put up a picture?
Of which, the photos that we took, or?
Yeah. Remind me where we are.
Oh, yeah. This, yeah, Brittany and I visited this one.
Okay.
That was you guys.
Yeah, I didn't
So-
think we went there. Okay.
Okay, so Joe, do you have any introductory comments on this before we get to Dan, and then I'll switch over to you, okay?
Yeah, so the major thing that we saw on our visit was that this gravel came out quite a bit further than the property line, came onto the town way here, as you can see a little bit, and that it also expands. It's kind of hard to see in the, let me see if I can find a better photo. Yeah. So, oh, nope, not that one. Here we go. Yeah, so in the original plan, this was all, I believe, a brick walkway, but it was only about, 3 feet wide or so. And so this constitutes an expansion of hardscape with this gravel here coming out from the side of the house.
And what is that, about 4 feet, 4.5 feet?
You know, when we measured it on Mass Mapper, I think it was closer to 6 feet, but it's kind of hard to tell from that. So Brittany did do a rough estimate based on the drawing, and I think she came up with, actually got to back out here. Do we have the mark? Yes, this one. So all this yellow is basically additional gravel that we didn't anticipate when the order was approved. So her rough estimate is 340 square feet.
So the gravel that says Union Street at the top is not his property?
Correct.
So they put gravel on Union Street, which is town property.
That's correct.
It's a way to water, I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's got to be fixed.
Agreed. That's what we would like to see before we issue any sort of certificate of compliance, is to either remove that or come up with some other plan.
Okay, Dan.
Sure. So for the record, Dan Ojala, I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Downcape Engineering in Yarmouthport. And Marty Riley unfortunately passed away. He was the original applicant for this. A great fellow, and that was very sad. But his partner Kennedy is, I believe, in the audience. He was outside earlier when we were chatting about it a little bit. And so there's a few points to make on this that, we could possibly consider as extenuating circumstances. One, I did provide a photograph, which I've got on a file, and I think I emailed to Joe, but it's not as though that area was, pristine wilderness at the end of the road there. Some of you may recall that he was illegally storing his floats there for many years, and one of the conditions was get the floats out of there off the town property. So if you look at the photographs now, they're over on the side of the house properly away. And if you look at the old aerial, you can see there was a boat in 2001. There was a boat stored in the garage area, and the floats were all the way out there at the end. So it's a disturbed area. And unfortunately, the town doesn't really have a drainage system for this road, so the water comes down and kind of unceremoniously dumps into this area. And Mr. Kennedy had a hard time with the water during construction, and so it was muddy and so forth. And so we actually think that it's a better situation now, rather than the ruddy grass and mess that's there. To have an edge with some pervious gravel might actually be a good thing to keep some water out of the river. We're not representing that would stop a big storm. The water would overtop it. But, a lot of first flush type contaminants would go down in that gravel. There'd probably be a nice biomat that forms and get some treatment rather than running it into the river. Number two, if you look at the photographs, it was a hard-packed, we have permission to leave the hard-packed brick surface. And as bricks are, they silts up between them, and they're tight-fit red brick. So that was a very impervious surface. That whole area would just run down towards the lawn and into the water. So what we have now with the wash stone, and again, our site plan was kind of silent on it. I kind of figured he'd leave that there, but it came up and was replaced with wash stone. The cobblestone apron was replaced or expanded a little bit, but I think we could take judicial notice of the fact that it was quite impervious, and now it's very pervious. So that's actually sort of a positive thing. We would note that under the Rivers Act, when you have an existing lawn or a driveway, converting that to a deck or a gravel surface would be considered a minor activity, which is exempt under the Rivers Act. And that's because it's a legal lawn. This lot was very old. Again, the road layout is 1800s. There's a 1946 map showing the end of the concrete there. Our structure has been there for many, many years. The older septic plan called that big tree there a 6-inch tree. Now it's about a foot. So it's kind of fun to see that grow over the years as the plans have progressed. But we carefully saved the tree. The landscaped area was converted over. The other important point is a very high groundwater. As you can see from the pictures, or I could show you other pictures, but we've only got a couple of feet of freeboard over the water here. So instead of dry wells, we use a gravel drip edge, and that's actually what you're looking at here is the gravel drip edge, which when you look at your page 7A, special condition 9, it does allow those gravel drip edges instead of dry wells in this particular case. So we would argue that that's just a beneficial gravel strip edge inside of where the walkway was, and shouldn't really count as any kind of hardscape that would be tagged against us. So I would respectfully submit that, while we could pull that up and put lawn back, I don't know that that would be the best thing for this site. We may someday redo the bulkhead, and usually you get a foot or 2 foot strip of plantings there. We'd be happy to do that one, and if that happens. But for now, we'd be hopeful that because you allowed the gravel drip edges, because there was already driveway and gravel hard pack at the end, and there is a pitch that runs all the water down there, that having put a little bit of wash stone out in the road layout actually is probably a net benefit for the environment. And being that it was lawn and exempt under the Rivers Act, maybe you could find your way to approve this, and then you'll get another bite at the apple when we come back for the seawall later. So that would be the pitch. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I agree, under the Rivers Act, you would have, I could see the exemption, but it's not exempted under the bylaw. So we do need to resolve it that way. And so I just want to make sure I understand. So you're saying if you'd like to keep it, but then you would do some sort of a planting, a 2 foot strip along the bank there, along the.
What I think might be nice, you noticed there was a couple of bushes there that disappeared. Perhaps a couple of bayberries, a condition that then Joe could review before he puts out the order. That might be something we could do now. I'd like to save the strip on the seawall for when we redo it, because we're just going to destroy it if we redo it. And my guess is it'll be done within 5 to 10 years, based on its age. And then we wouldn't have to redo that. But if we were to put in, near that tree, 2 or 3 bayberries, something like this, then maybe that would sort of paper over the small incursion to the local bylaw where we added some more pervious gravel where there was lawn. And again, it's not too grievous in that, there was already disturbance there. The end of the road was, just kind of a messy, hard-packed, gravelly, rutty area, and now it's a little bit neater. And it does serve a purpose of infiltrating some stormwater. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have that there. And perhaps 3 bayberries, 3 gallon plus, might cover the sin.
I'm just a little confused. This picture we're seeing now is from 2022, correct?
That's pre-development, yeah,
Can I
with
see
the
the
hard
other
pack.
picture too, please?
Yeah. And there's another angle looking back.
You don't have the same view.
I have a similar view. Hold on, let me see if I can, oh, maybe I don't. I do have a lot of pictures, though. How about that?
Okay.
And that's the way it is now.
As of the 20,
So the bushes are gone, tree's still there, it's grown, and Union Street is,
well, let me go to, do we have the plan?
Yeah, the wooden fence is still there, the tree is still there.
So,
The tree doesn't show on that one, unfortunately.
yeah, but the tree is roughly on the property line.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts. So, to go back to.
well, that gives me an idea
current
where the property
conditions.
line is,
Yeah, the property line is right about here.
Did they use that for parking on their grass?
Yeah, yeah,
that's property.
in the photo from, yeah, this is Van, and as Dan has stated, there was a previous issue with floats being stored in that area, and you can look at aerials from the past, and you see boats and
I think I
trailers and that sort of
remember
thing
that.
being parked in that area.
Is that still used today for parking?
I think it's
Can't
a
speak to that 'cause
town
there were no
town way to
cars.
water where you could probably park there for a minute, but generally parking wouldn't be allowed there. Although I guess the town manager would have to, opine on it, but normally people wouldn't walk. You could just walk down there and throw a line out if you wanted fishing.
Yeah, I mean, we're now talking about town property, and so, I mean, we don't really have the right to speak for the town in terms of how they want to manage the property. I would assume that they would want to do something to maintain their use. I mean, I tend to agree that, you know, there's got to be something there. It's a weight of water, so, you know, I mean, you got to have something there for people to drive across, walk across, that sort of thing. But I think it was also done clearly without permit, and I don't think without too much thought there.
Yeah, I certainly didn't say they could do it or not do it, but I do apologize, because my as-built plan shows it, and my guys didn't pick it up. I normally would have said something, but in talking to my guy Craig, who did it, he says, oh, yeah, well, that was just a gravel drip edge beside the walkway, and so what we're really talking about is just one little triangle, and so perhaps the 3 shrubs could compensate for that. The end of the road, you know, for what it's worth, I did happen to notice there was a fence across it in 1946 that blocked off the end, but I don't think that's been there since, not in recent memory. It was always just kind of an empty area at the end of the road with a couple of parking spots.
Going back to the seawall, and you said the plantings, and you said 5 to 10 years before you've.
My guess, I mean, it's been there a while,
So
and
you're
it's a
saying
very
keep
expensive
it the way it
home.
is until the next 5 to 10 years, until you need to do the.
Well, you guys, yeah, not to interrupt, but you usually like a little something when you do a seawall over, you know, some kind of a little strip, and I thought that might be the best time to do it, rather than do something now which would be
To be
disturbed.
honest, Dan, I'm not feeling that.
Well, again, don't you usually, when you do a seawall, require a little strip?
Again, I
You
think,
didn't require it in this instance, but,
yeah, I mean, in the past, when people have put in new seawalls, we would certainly look for it. Or if they were doing something else, as part of mitigation, we would say you would put a strip in behind the seawall.
yeah.
I think in this case, I mean, the gravel that's there is taking the place partially of the hardened brick walkway.
Correct.
But it has definitely expanded. I can see,
Yeah, we can
I can
measure
see
it.
your point there in that it's, you know, the difference between grass and gravel in this case, probably not much there. My only concern is sometimes when you have that gravel like that, then people start making it, it makes it easier for people to start spraying pesticides in order to control the weeds rather than going out and picking it up and pulling it, that sort of thing. So that's one concern.
I'd be happy with an ongoing condition that be weeded manually, you know, just to put the owner on notice. That would,
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to prove and harder to enforce, but.
yeah, but at least it was.
So that's
put
why
out
I would
there.
say, I would be willing to leave it go, but you'd have to put that 2-foot strip in right now. There's no way I'm gonna say, yeah, come back in 10 years, because
I won't be here.
I may not be on the commission in 10 years. Can you believe that?
Just so you know, in looking at this, it's about 1.5 feet wider than the old walkway was. That's, so where Brittany shows that walkway aligning with that, full disclosure, it's about 1.5 feet seaward of where it was. But the area inside of that walkway was certainly lawn before, and is now required to be drip edge, so it's only very slightly wider, so just so we're clear, the incursion that we're talking about is about the big as that little triangle I've drawn, until you talk about what's in the road, and, if you really want us to scrape up what's in the road and put it back to the, kind of crummy condition it was, we could do that, but it doesn't seem like it would make much sense, because it was always, as you could see from where our car was parked, just, kind of dirty, hard-packed, gravelly grass that somebody had to mow, so.
I think we'd have to hear from, I'm trying to think, is it DPW who maintains the
Natural resources,
Yeah, DPW or
waste-to-wall
DNR.
water?
natural resources.
Oh, yeah,
Resources.
wastewaters.
In fact, there's a study going on now that's partially funded by the CPC regarding all these town ways to water. I don't know if this thing is identified or whatever. I think it is quite unusual to just arbitrarily take some of the town property like that and do something different with it without some sort of a discussion with the town. In this case, it would be natural resources. And, you made a comment about putting it back in its kind of, I forget what you said, crummy.
Well, it would simply rake up the gravel and you'd be left with just kind of what it was, which is just
Hope
kind
that
of.
because this was done and it was done improperly, that it would be returned to some other kind of acceptable condition.
Well, I would, yeah, I mean, but obviously it wasn't a pristine, anything. It was just
But now it's
burnt grass.
been encroached upon inappropriately.
Well, yeah, I don't think there was any malice of intent here. It was probably just a muddy mess when they got done with the forklifts and everything, and they just, let's even it out and put a little gravel. I mean, the rest of the road is paved. It was
I
just,
don't accept that, Dan, honestly.
Well,
That's.
it's just a little bit of
ridiculous.
of native, wash stone in an area that was always used as a drive, so, I mean, it is what it is. If you don't like it, we
No, it
can
isn't.
certainly move it and put it
We need to
back.
hear from- we should probably ask DNR, since they're the ones who manage the waste of water. They should at least have some sort of a say as to whether or not they,
Yeah, and,
or not.
and really, that we don't have a sale pending right now, it's no problem. We'll continue it and get whatever advice and consent you want. We have no problem with that. I would just looked at it as that, it's not as though we disturbed an area that wasn't already disturbed, so I figured a little bit of inert gravel wouldn't be too big a deal, but we absolutely can go through whatever you'd like us to do.
Yeah, so from that side, I'd like to get some feedback from DNR on that one, but,
Then as far as the part on the property with the extra gravel fill, I understand that it does serve as a drip trench, but usually those are, like a foot, 18 inches wide, so it's much wider than that. So as far as we're looking at it, it's wider than it needs to be.
Sure.
So, and if you disagree with our kind of, back of the envelope calculations there, if you could figure out the actual square footage of excess gravel, we'd like to see maybe a 3-to-1 restoration, mitigation, planting. And I agree, the best place to put it is along the river, along the water's edge. I understand what you're saying about having to redo it in 5 to 10 years, but yeah, I hate to see it left as lawn in the intervening years.
If you'd said 1 year, I
something
would
we
have
could do.
thought differently, but 5 to 10 years is a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be the end of the world to redo it, but just was my thought, it might be a little nicer on the corner, but I hear you. All right, well, I'll go to the owner, we'll check with DNR. If they don't want it there, we'll put it back to exactly what it was and remove the extra hardscape, and then we can just issue the order. Or if you'd like to mitigate it with 3-to-1, we'll do that. It's obviously not a big deal to lift up some gravel, so, one way or the other, we'll get it figured out. I appreciate your time, and do we need to continue to a date certain, or would we just reapply, or?
So I guess you could either withdraw it, or we could deny it. And then you would just have to
I think,
reapply.
yeah, say no more. I think it'd be much easier. We'll withdraw, if we could withdraw without prejudice, and then we'll get this figured out. If you could help point me in the right direction on who to talk to about the right-of-way, whether it's DPW or DCR, whoever you've got that looks at that.
Okay.
And
So-
maybe they've got some drainage plan in that area. It would be wonderful, but I'll check in with them.
So yeah, so talk to Bill Benetti at DNR. And then if you would, tomorrow, could you send an email to Joe and Brittany, just saying we request to withdraw this COC request?
Absolutely, and then,
We'll take it all up and start the whole process all over again, once we get that figured
yeah,
out.
as soon as we get it figured out, we'll see which way to go. But, so, a 3-to-1 mitigation or remove it sounds like the way to go. So we'll get one of those two items figured out, and off we'll go. All right, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
And just to mention too, the whole driveway was all brick, and now it's all pervious, so that's maybe something to consider when we revisit it, that it is quite a bit better situation, present exact area disregarded.
I would say marginally better, but,
Well, hard packed brick is pretty impervious.
but we'll discuss that at a later date. How's that?
Fair enough.
All right, thanks, Dan. All right, I am going to go back to the notices of intent. We're looking at notice of intent for SE 83-2459, Alfred A. Delfino, 15 Webster Road, and after the fact filing for retaining walls and fill, fence, and improvements to rent station with land subject to coastal storm flowage. Here you go.
Good evening, Lynn Hamlin, representing the applicant. Apologize for my lateness. This is an NOI in response to an enforcement order. The resource area is strictly floodplain. There's no other wetlands resource area within 100 feet of the property. The enforcement order cited a retaining wall and fill, or retaining walls and fill. And I went out there, I included the fence, and they did improvements to the existing rent station. We have rent stations now. And I just wanted to bring everything into compliance, so there was a record of, on file from this day forward, so there would be a known spot where everything was approved. I tried to take some pictures, if you hadn't made it out there, but a lot of the retaining walls were just reconstructed in place when Mr. Delfino bought the property. It was in need of some improvements. The retaining walls were all rotted. So he replaced the one on the easterly property line, the one that kind of boxes in around the deck, and on the, I think it's the westerly side of the basement entrance. There was a retaining wall that ran east to west, and I got a picture in my narrative, that came about 3 to 4 feet off the deck, and he extended it to make the backyard flat and to preclude the runoff from going down the slope into the neighbor's yard. The tree that you can see in the little photograph on page 1 was undisturbed. It just kept it there. He brought in about 10 cubic yards of fill, loam, and stone. So there was no increase in impervious area. I did a extensive narrative outlining the different aspects of your regulations and how I believe the project complies. It's one of those dense neighborhoods with very small properties. The property's 0.12. They're all on top of each other, so we put the fence up just to provide a little privacy. There's no impact to the flood zone. This is at the upper reaches of an A zone, so it's got low height of wave impact, and actually it straddles the boundary of it, so it's up high and then it's almost out of it. So I will stop there and see if you have any questions.
Questions from the commission?
You did mention that stormwater stays on site, is that what you said?
Yes, actually, it stays better on site because he leveled it off.
Okay. No other questions?
Okay, are there any abutters here?
Anybody online?
My only, I guess it's not really for us to worry about, but I don't like the fact that you've got a wall going off of the property onto a neighbor's property.
I think the neighbor, on the west side?
On the east side.
East side? Oh, you're right. He's very friendly with that neighbor, and the neighbor was happy that he replaced the wall.
I mean, I assume because it's helping benefit the stormwater, that's, I assume that's probably why.
What he
not a
did is he
complaint.
replaced it in the exact same location as the pre-existing one, and the neighbor was happy that somebody came and fixed all the rotten walls.
Okay. Anybody else?
Online?
Who?
Is there anybody online?
Yeah, I'm still working on the commission.
Sorry.
Anybody in the commission?
No.
No? Joe, anything?
Not really. We just, we're concerned about how the stormwater is being managed. Are those dry wells? It looked like there are plenty of gutters and,
There's a lot of stone. He brought in a lot of stone,
Yeah,
so
okay,
it can
okay.
just flow. It's sandy.
Okay.
There's no issue with runoff.
all right.
Okay, anybody in the audience on this one? Anybody on Zoom? I can't read that name. Claudia?
It just says Claudia's
Okay,
iPad, I
yes.
think.
All right, Claudia, go ahead.
So this is Tim Norton and Claudia here, and we're the abutters at number 13. And just wanted to point out a couple of things. So we had concerns that, of course, their addition encroached upon our wall, which we had installed, and we went through this process last year. And there were drainage holes on the side of our wall that we had put on that abuts them, and those are now covered up, of course, with this fill.
And additional, I want to let you know that that was a boundary wall. I understand our neighbors need to space for his short-term rental business, but he filled the space that we left for the draining property. That is all. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to address that? Or it doesn't need addressing?
Would you like to address it?
Their wall is constructed actually on my client's property, and they were, if any drainage was occurring, it shouldn't have been being discharged onto my client's property anyway. So they didn't.
I'm confused by the numbers. So is this the house, if you're looking at the front of your house?
Right.
To the right? Okay, thank you.
And that project there was subject to an extensive enforcement.
Yeah, that's what, I'm trying to remember which house. I do know.
Right, this was,
This is the one where he had all the.
all right, say no more.
Oh, just a question. So I was out there, and so that area that's,
Yes.
I'm sorry? Oh, maybe that's feedback.
Claudia, could you please, okay, thank you.
So the area behind the house that is elevated, they put in a new retaining wall and then filled that all in, okay? And when was this done?
Not long ago.
How long ago?
He just bought it. Maybe this fall? Let's see, I'm sorry, I don't have that. I'm looking at the date of the enforcement order. The enforcement order is dated in September. I would take a stab and say this summer. I'm not positive,
Yeah.
but recently.
Yeah, okay, all right. And so no one had any notion that they should get a permit and come before this committee regarding that work?
No, I can understand why. You look around, there's no wetlands. You're just in the upper reaches of a
I
flood
think it's
zone.
just a floodplain
You're in a
situation.
dense neighborhood, and there's construction all around you. I would know because this is my field, but I understand where people wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that people in that area wouldn't know. But, okay, well, it's just always interesting to me that work goes on to this extent without anybody saying to themselves, well, gee, I wonder if we need a permit from the town, or we should go, we're in a floodplain, maybe we should go before the Conservation Commission. I mean, are people so oblivious to that type of thing that they proceed with this? And, you know, I mean, it just is interesting.
I don't always assume that people are malicious in their intent, especially if you don't come from the Cape.
Yeah, no, you know.
And especially you're not bumping up against a swamp or something that's more visual. I can
don't know.
understand it.
I've always had a pet peeve that I thought that the Realtor who sells it and the lawyer who does the work should say to them, hey, just to let you know you're in a flood zone. And that's not you, But that's a pet peeve of mine, that people who sell a house in here, they're so intent in selling a house, they don't tell you everything. And they should.
Because there's no regulation requiring them to.
Right.
Because if it was, if there was a toxic waste site underneath the house, they have to sell. And they-
Well, I believe in ethics.
No, I'm 100% with you.
I live next to a property that was 100% wetland, and they were marching people through there to build their house. I tacked my cards on trees. I mean, I just thought that was so wrong.
But the thing is, and again, I know this might not even be within our purview, but the thing is that if you're buying a house, you probably know that it's in a floodplain. Why wouldn't you, as the buyer, say, hey, tell me about this area, and then somebody brings up the notion of floodplain? Okay, and then, to me, that should lead to, well, do we need to do anything special here when we want to do some adjustments to the house? And that house needed, from the owner told us, an awful lot of work. You know, it had raccoons in it or whatever it was prior to him taking over. And he's done a beautiful job, but, you know, it's just so frustrating to see this work done, and then there's an after-the-fact kind of a filing. And if the filing had taken place, they wouldn't have been filling up that area in back of the house, I believe. This commission would not have allowed it.
Really?
I don't think. I'm speaking for myself.
I was pretty happy that I thought this was a pretty compliant project. I don't like getting them that you're on an uphill battle, because it just wouldn't have been approved.
No, I don't know. Okay, well, thank you.
We have two people
Yeah.
online who have their hands raised.
Yeah, I mean, I marvel more that this work goes on and nobody in the neighborhood says anything, but that's neither here nor there. Claudia, do you have anything additional?
Yes, just Tim here again with Claudia. It's neither here nor there, but just to inject a little bit more information. These people did file the complaint against us for this similar, and so, yes, they're very well aware of the requirements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody else up there, too.
All right,
Fred.
Can't read it.
Fred?
Yes. Good evening. I'm the homeowner at 15 Webster that Linda's representing. I first like to correct Mr. Norton that we did not file the complaint against them.
Hold on. I don't care who filed complaints against what, okay? Do you have something to say about this project?
My only comment was made during the visit is that it was an innocent ignorance about living by the waterfront. I relied upon the contractor, asked about a permit. I was advised I didn't need one. I trusted they understood where we were, what our location and what the regulations were, and we moved forward from there. So nothing was done maliciously or to be done in a sneaky fashion. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there anything, any further discussion among the board?
Fred, can you
Fred,
turn off?
could you please mute? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Lynn.
When you said about the next door neighbor, I thought you were going on to comments from the audience.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Where are we here? All right, next order of business.
Is it the enforcement?
Number 5.
Yes, next order of business is moving on to enforcement. We have Blue Flax Design for Nance Carbone, 14 and 20 Kingsbury Way. This is a violation of special conditions 10 through 13, 15, 18 of SE 83-2104, and this is a review of the restoration plans.
Good evening, everyone. Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design here on behalf of Nancy and Philip Carboni, who are also in the audience here this evening. We're here to review a plan that we're proposing as part of the enforcement order that was issued in October of 2024 for some issues with the open order of conditions that had not been closed out or received a certificate of compliance from 2017. Mainly, there were three issues with the special conditions in that order of conditions that had not been met. Special condition number 10, that the area that was disturbed during the mowing for the bamboo shall be revegetated, that a 20-foot buffer strip shall be planted adjacent to that previously managed area. And additionally, that, I believe it was number 13, that landscape debris, including leaves, grass clippings, et cetera, invasive debris be removed from the management area. So this goes back to an order of conditions that was issued in 2017 that allowed the property owners to manage invasive bamboo that was located on town property, that was invading the upland portions of the property, of the Carboni's property. So they were working with the agent at that time, trying to find a solution to the bamboo and Phragmites that was invading the area, and they came up with a mowing schedule to manage the bamboo in that area without the use of herbicide. So fast forward, the bamboo had been managed. It was continuing to regenerate. As we know bamboo does, it's particularly difficult to manage. There are clumps of bamboo that are regenerating within that area. And in addition to that, Phragmites was moving into that area. So they conducted some mowing earlier in 2024, and then this enforcement order was issued as a result of that mowing because the order of conditions had expired. They requested a certificate of compliance, which was denied because of those three special conditions that were not met. So I think one of the issues that when the Carbonis approached us to come up with a solution to this, I think one of the issues was that there was not a really well thought out long-term management plan proposed for this area, given the tenacity of the bamboo and the pressure of the Phragmites moving into this area. So we've put together a proposed restoration plan for this area to meet the enforcement conditions that were issued in October, with the exception of two of those enforcement conditions that we're asking for you to consider this evening. The first one is condition number 4, that requires a single rail fence denoting the conservation property be installed. And we are proposing to install shrubs in lieu of that single rail fence. We think the shrubs will do a better job protecting the wetland resource area, the bordering vegetated wetland in particular. And number 12, there's a condition that there should be no cutting or mowing beyond that fencing. And one of the things that we are proposing in here to continue to manage the bamboo and the Phragmites that are regenerating in this area is to seed the restored area with an obligate FAC wet seed mix, as well as interplanting it with wetland shrubs, and then allowing us to mow this area over the next several years to prevent that Phragmites from moving in and prevent that bamboo from taking over while the restored vegetation establishes. So those are the two areas of the enforcement order that we're asking for some slight consideration for changing. We have submitted a restoration planting plan along with a land management plan narrative, which I'd be happy to walk through very briefly. With that land management narrative, we've included an introduction with our goals and objectives for the project, existing conditions, which I know you're all familiar with this site. We did want to note that the area directly to the north of Lot 14, which is labeled B on our page 3 of our land management plan, is almost entirely Phragmites. Phragmites has almost entirely taken over that area. There is a little bit of Baccharis at the edge, but otherwise Phragmites has completely taken over the area. Area C is the portion of the bordering vegetated wetland that was recently mowed, and that's the area in question that led to this enforcement issue. And that's the area where we're focusing most of our restoration goals on that particular area, because there is regenerating bamboo and the Phragmites is moving in from the west into this area. In addition to that, there has been some mowing, regular turf maintenance that has moved on to the town property. On page 4 of our land management plan, we show some images of that. We are proposing to remove that turf that is not on the Carboni's property, that is on the town property, and to restore that area with a mix of native shrubs as well as grasses and wildflowers. We believe that the native shrubs will prevent any mowing intrusion into that area, will stop that. It'll be very clear delineation between the property, and that therefore an additional fence is not really necessary in that case. On page 5 of our management plan, we discuss the goals and outcomes. Our number 1 goal is to restore and stabilize the BVW by managing the existing invasive vegetation, replanting with native species. Our outcome 2 is to protect water quality within the bordering vegetated wetland, as well as the associated waterways nearby, improve wildlife habitat and function value within the wetland and vegetated buffer zones. With that, we've also provided a management plan that we're proposing, which is outlined on pages 6 and 7. What we propose to do immediately is to go in and, first of all, remove the debris that was left behind from the mowing. So go in there with a walk-behind skid steer with a York rake, rake out that debris. It's quite thick in there so that we get good seed-to-soil contact when we restore, when we seed the area with the obligate vac wet seed mix. That debris would be removed to a composting facility that was required as part of the original order of conditions in 2017, and this will allow us to be able to replant this area effectively. Once that area is raked, it will be seeded immediately, and that area will be rolled to get good seed-to-soil contact, and then the area will be covered with chopped straw. In the spring, we propose to remove the existing turf areas with a sod cutter to prepare them for planting. We don't want to do that in the winter because we don't want to leave exposed soils. We would remove that sod, plant the woody vegetation, seed the areas between the woody vegetation plantings, and additionally, we would plant the woody vegetation that we're proposing in the bordering vegetated wetland, mainly spirea, meadowsweet, and winterberry holly. There is existing sweet fern that's in this area, as well as some groundsel bush that would just be allowed to regenerate. None of those existing native plants would be touched. We would continue to monitor for signs of invasive species. We would recommend doing a very minor selective herbicide treatment with systemic herbicide to the few Phragmites that are moving in. You can see those on the bottom right-hand corner, as well as the clumps of bamboo that are regenerating in this area. We would propose to use temporary irrigation on the upland planting areas to get the woody vegetation established and make sure that they are properly irrigated throughout the growing season. This would be temporary irrigation just for the purposes of establishing the woody vegetation. We would continue to monitor for weeds, hand pull any noxious weeds that are moving in. There is actually a fairly healthy herbaceous layer of native vegetation within the vegetated wetland. We noted skunk cabbage, ferns, and some other juncus species within that area. So with light root raking, we won't disturb that herbaceous vegetation that's dormant now, and then we'll be able to add to that with our proposed seed mix. In the second growing season, we would then cut the previous growing season's vegetation to the ground. We would use a power scythe or string trimmer. We are not proposing to bring machinery into this area once we remove the vegetation debris that's left behind. This would allow us to also carefully work around the woody plants that are existing and that we're proposing to plant into this area. And we would continue that management into the third growing season. We would continue to monitor. Monitoring reports are required as part of the enforcement order, so we would be submitting the monitoring reports per the schedule that you've laid out October 30th in 2025, 26, and 27. And then at that time, I think we could then have a discussion with the commission regarding any need for ongoing management in this area. I think we should have good control of the existing Phragmites and bamboo that's in this area. We are always going to have significant pressure from the Phragmites that's located directly to the west. So just want to acknowledge that. And then I think after that third growing season, we could then adjust the plan and come before the commission with any, requirements as far as continuing management if that's necessary. So I am happy to answer any questions about the proposed plan. I think when I spoke with Brittany, her goal was to review this with you because we were proposing to make those two changes, mainly not using the single rail fence, proposing woody vegetation instead, and proposing some cutting beyond that area for a few growing seasons while we get things established.
Well, I guess I'll start off here.
I mean, I have a couple questions too, if you need a second.
No, I think I've got it, but I will certainly come back to you in just a minute. So, this restoration plan is not real clear. First of all, I see no contours, or at least nothing that's called out or specified. So I'm a little concerned with that because I'm looking at the site and I'm looking at the photos and I see where this, especially where the grass is coming down, you've got that grassed bank you keep referring to. Is that not a coastal bank?
It is not a coastal bank as far as I'm understanding. They did have the site surveyed by Land Management Systems. We delineated the bordering vegetated wetland there. So if anything, it potentially could be an inland bank, perhaps. Looking at the flood elevation, I am not aware. The flood elevation was not, what was required in the enforcement order was that the 35-foot buffer, 50-foot buffer, and 100-foot buffer be shown, and that's what the land surveyors picked up. I am showing that slope per my measurement. If you notice, in the area that's tan, there are two lines there. I went out and measured the top of the slope and the bottom of the slope. The bordering vegetated wetland is north of the toe of that slope. So the actual BVW that was delineated based on soils, and we did submit the data sheets for that, is the green line that we flagged in the field. So you can see that it runs through the area that's shaded in blue. And then as you move landward or south of that area, the tan area, then where the tan area starts and the blue area meets is the bottom of the slope, just based on my field measurements. And then there's a second line that denotes the top of the slope, and then the land levels out from there.
Well,
Brittany did ask me about topography. The surveyors did not pick up topo because it was not required as part of the enforcement order. So they only they picked up our BVW flags, property lines, and then they denoted the buffer zones as was required.
well, I mean, I would definitely, I would definitely say that's a coastal bank. It's a state, it meets the definition of a state coastal bank. That's beside that's one issue that I'm concerned. Obviously, if the enforcement order didn't call out that, then, shame on us maybe, but my other question then relates to what you're specifically asking about the no fence and shrubs instead.
Mm-hmm.
No way I'm going to approve that. It's like, that's half the reason what got us into the trouble in the first place, is that they just kept mowing and mowing and mowing. So I think there needs to be a fence delineating the two properties, and I don't see, I just don't see any other way around that. And you're also asking about continual mowing. Yeah, so I guess we're sort of at a hard place here because we're asking for restoration, but I don't know that we're talking about ongoing control of invasives on town property. And if we were doing that, then I think you would have to file a notice of intent for something like that. So that's my points. I'll turn it over to the commission for any other comments they might have. Anybody?
Yeah, I think your points are well taken, Ed, and I don't know if I could add to it. I'll just leave it at that. I would agree with you.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm just wondering that we issued the OOC in 2017, and then the restoration plan was never provided, and the permit expired in 2021, and here we are, 2025, and I'm just curious what went on.
So my understanding is that the homeowners voluntarily took this on, the management program on town property, because the town property was severely invaded with bamboo, and that bamboo was starting to invade their personal property. So they worked with the agent at that time to come up with a plan to manage the bamboo on the town property at their expense. And that was their goal, to manage the bamboo and to prevent the bamboo from moving back into their property. And that's what the order of conditions was issued for, to allow that to happen. The bamboo, as we all know, or maybe we don't know, but bamboo is a tenacious species, which is very difficult to manage. Mowing is not adequate to prevent that bamboo from coming back. And it has continued to come back, and so they've continued to manage that bamboo in that area. Granted, they're acknowledging full well that that their permit expired and that they did not seek additional permits for that mowing, but that was how this originally came about. So they were working very closely with the commission back in 2017 and with the agent at that time to try and manage this bamboo without using herbicide through a mowing program that, unfortunately, like I said when I started my introduction, was that there wasn't a lot of long-term thought, I think, put into that management plan. It was a plan that they, I'm going to use the word concocted, I don't know if that's fair, but that they developed on their own without input from somebody who has knowledge about managing these particular species. And so that resulted in good results as far as keeping the bamboo at bay and allowing that herbaceous layer to come back. And there is some, like I said, there is some clethra coming back into this area. So there are some native woody shrubs. There's a herbaceous layer of healthy native vegetation, which did not exist prior to the bamboo management. We are just trying to jumpstart that, allow this area to regenerate, manage the bamboo and the Phragmites that's moving into this area so that we have a well thought out long-term management plan that we're presenting to you. I mean, as far as the woody vegetation planted in the buffer zone, we feel that a woody vegetated buffer strip is going to provide better protection to the wetland as far as managing, stormwater runoff, slowing water down, allowing it to infiltrate and be filtered by root systems, than a split rail fence. And I understand why the commission is looking for a split rail fence completely, but we were thinking that if we planted Virginia rose in particular up in that upland area along the property line, that would certainly discourage anybody from going into that area in the future. And that it would be very visually clear to property owners that this is town property or this is not their property.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, I fully encourage you to plant as you're indicating there, but there's no way I'd approve this plan without putting up a fence to show the exact property line, because again, what's to stop anybody from mowing down the Virginia rose or anything else? It's the fence is not there to do anything in terms of stormwater pollutant control or anything else. It's there to be a physical barrier that says the area beyond this point is considered protected area. You need to stop it, and you need to think twice before you go in there with a mower or doing any kind of control whatsoever. And that's designed for, something that we can put onto an order of conditions or enforcing conditions that will continue on beyond this homeowner, if, if it comes down, that sometime down the line, the homeowner sells, there's a way at least then to say, oh, I see this fence, maybe I should think before I start mowing into the area. So anyhow, that's my thought.
Throwing leaves.
Anything else from the commission? Joe,
I know I wasn't.
I'm sorry.
But, I was out there, and there's an extensive area behind, the property line is now marked, isn't it? It's, yeah.
It has been marked by the surveyors,
Yeah, and so there's this extensive area behind it that's all mowed.
and that's what we're proposing to plant.
Yeah, but I just don't, okay. And it's town property. And I don't know if I don't know if I was on the commission when this was first brought up, but I sort of remember some of it.
I mean, you're here for the enforcement order.
Yeah.
The enforcement order was, more, much.
Had to do with the fence and all the rest of it, and don't cut somebody else's property and the whole deal. I kind of remember that.
That was just in October, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so time flies, I don't know. But the thing is, what about that, you're calling it the wet meadow?
Yes.
That's been recently, like, Gravelead or something, right?
It was, the bamboo was mowed in that area, yes, that's why we're here, so
Whole
that.
big area.
That was the original management area from the 2017 Order of Conditions, as well as the area of Phragmites behind Lot 14. So those areas were being regularly managed per the Order of Conditions that was issued in 2017 to manage that Phragmites and the bamboo that was in that area. So that's where this project started, and that was done in conjunction with approval from the Conservation Commission and working closely with the agent at that time.
That's where I'm having a.
Yeah.
If I can just interject, we weren't allowed to
Wait,
put
wait.
any equipment down there.
You just have to come up and
Oh,
identify yourself.
I just wanted to say,
Wait a minute.
when you mentioned Gravely, that was in the original order of conditions.
If you just identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Nancy Carboni. We were not allowed to bring any equipment other than hand cutters. So there was no Gravely. We hire 5 men that go down there with, it's like a string, like a weed whacker, but on the end of it is a blade.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. So we weren't allowed to put any wheels down there. That was the order of conditions, and we never have. So they've just been cutting it by hand, which is obviously much more labor-intensive, and it did cost more, but we followed it as they said, and we agreed to that.
Okay.
That was all. I just wanted to correct on that.
No, perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
So anything else from the commission? Turn it over to Joe. If you have any further comments, Joe?
Yeah, so, first of all, can I just ask what the objection to the fence is? Is it just aesthetically not pleasing? Is that the? Am I allowed to talk? If you introduce yourself. Yeah.
Just the layout of the lots, it's a lot of expense for something that isn't really providing a lot. It's a tremendous amount of fencing. And there is a lot of area around this particular piece of property that the town owns that has egress to it beyond my property. And my fence on my property isn't really stopping much, as you see to the right of this property is all open land that the town owns. And it's very easily accessed by that area. So, yeah, aesthetically, it's very unpleasing to have this railroad track of fencing going through my property that, as you've been to my property, you see that I maintain it very well. I spend a lot of money keeping that property up. I pay a lot of taxes in this town. Everything that we've done here was to mitigate the bamboo, first and foremost. It is an amazing plant, all the way into our foundation. It will grow through, you can cover the entire lawn with black silt, the material, and it will grow through it, because photosynthesis will take the sun and the energy from a plant 500 feet away and send it, and grows, and it will grow 8 feet in one season. I had to cut it. I was at war with this stuff. It is just unbelievable. I cut that stuff 3 times a season. If I didn't, my entire property would be covered with bamboo. And I am not exaggerating one iota. So, we offered to really reconstitute the entire wetlands, well beyond what the order and condition has stipulated that we do in lieu of putting the fence up. It's not just, and I want to make that clear, and we will do anything that you ask us to do as far as planting. I'll spend the money to make it right. We really don't want to see the fence every day. I don't know how many feet it is. Do you remember? 199 feet of fencing.
this-
I mean, it's a lot. It's.
Understood. So if you were to put in planting in lieu of a fence, would it be on your side of the property, property line, or?
We'll put it on our property.
Okay. Because really my main issue, and I think Brittany kind of agrees with me here, is that the reason we wanted to see the topo is because it does appear like this could have been a bank, right? And the only reason it doesn't look like a more natural, what you would picture as a wetland delineation, is because it's being mowed for so long. And when you look at the delineation that I know you had done professionally, but I mean, in what reality does a wetland come to a peak like that and then branch out? Like that seems unrealistic.
Well, the slope is there, so that's at the toe of the slope on the Phragmites side on lot 14, and that is the way. So I'm presuming, and I don't know the history of this area, you probably all know it better than I do. I don't know if at some point this was cranberry bog, this was being managed as cranberries, that's what it looks like to me. This could have been back in, 1899 to 1907 when the cranberry industry was booming here. But that is what it appears. There's a ditch system throughout here. So that's how it appears to me. So I would say that is a man-made feature, man-made topography, not natural topography. Again, because of its status as BVW, I don't know if this would be considered an inland bank as far as the slope, although, yes, the BVW, we delineated the BVW, obviously with lack of vegetation. This was done completely on soils, and those soil logs and data sheets were submitted.
Yeah.
Joe, could you, on your one slide that shows the mowing?
Yes. Don't let me lose this picture, though, because I want to come back to it.
Well, if you want to do it, go ahead.
Actually, yeah, if I could real quick, Jack. This picture is actually taken from the post basically at the peak of 14, I think, or 20, where it comes out a little bit further. And it just doesn't seem to follow that sharp grade that the plan shows. It seems at the very least to be rounded. And that's why it just seems awfully convenient that none of the planting that's proposed, according to this plan, comes onto the property line. Like, we required 20 feet of planting buffer from the delineated wetland, and that, like, narrowest spot right there is just barely 20 feet, and it just seems awfully convenient. I'm not, I'm, again, not trying to lay blame or anything, but to my eyes, that's what it looks like.
I'm losing, where on that planting plan is that slide the property?
My picture?
Yeah.
So I believe I was at this point right
Okay.
here
Okay.
when I took this picture.
And then the picture of the long mowed area?
That is this one.
Yes, where is that?
That is basically, that's a little bit further back. Let me look at the plan. That's from this stake right here where 14 and 20 meet.
And it
further
goes to the
south.
left,
And-
to the right?
Yeah, and I was looking to the right to get that, that area that was.
But isn't there also to the left,
Yeah, I have a
another
photo.
bank?
Yes, but I was
is-
actually trying to find a picture that showed it.
Well, that shows it a little bit.
Yeah, but it's, and the wetland is pretty well, like, it is flagged right on the Phragmites line. But again, like, it kind of follows the bank, but, it's, this picture doesn't really show how much space there is between the Phragmites and where the bank starts. which is what I was
It's very, the Phragmites is right at the toe of the slope in
on
that
that one, it's not
area.
that much,
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah. So that was, oh, there you go. You can see, yeah.
Yeah.
The Phragmites basically on this lot, the western lot, follows pretty much right along the bank.
And I mean, the reason the Phragmites is in that location is because it's being mowed regularly to keep the Phragmites from marching upland and inland. So,
Well, and that, I think, is the exact point, that if the Phragmites hadn't been mowed, would the wetland then be delineated all the way into the Carbonis' yard?
we know
and then we would've-
Phragmites will grow into the upland areas, and the wetland was delineated based on soils, so hydric soils. So that's how the wetland was delineated.
That's fair, yeah.
And the Phragmites will continue to grow up into the upland area if it's not kept at bay. The Carbonis would like to be able to mow their lawn to keep the Phragmites from coming into their yard from the town property, and to keep the bamboo from coming into the town property, coming into their yard from the town property. So,
So on this, where is the property line?
I'm off the property line here, so you can't, it's hard to see the flags. But if you
the
look-
property line is,
You can see these flags here, the property line on whatever that western lot is. I forget
Yeah.
which one's 14.
And point it out on the map, I mean, on the plan.
Oh, on the plan?
yeah, we planted right up to the
Pretty much
property
right
line.
between the lots when I took that picture. So I'm somewhere around here taking that picture to the left.
So there is the plan scale is 1 inch equals 30.
Yes.
So there is, I measured out in the field, I mean, there's about 20 feet.
Yeah.
And then it gets wider as you move east. So they've been it is true that the Carbonis have been mowing to keep the Phragmites to the edge of that slope. We know that once that stops mowing, the Phragmites will move its way into that area. The Carbonis would like to keep the Phragmites out of their property, so they would like to continue to maintain and mow their property.
Okay, so, again, so what did the enforcement order ask you to do? Did it ask you
So
to
yes,
record-
it did. It asked us to remove the debris. That was number one. No debris in the area. To submit copies of professionally prepared restoration plan with a planting protocol. To indicate the property lines in all jurisdictional areas, and including the 35-foot, 50-foot, and 100-foot buffer from the wetland resource areas. That for a single rail fence and sign denoting the conservation property shall be put up along the property line and maintained. And this is where we're proposing to do the shrubs instead. That native species, trees, shrubs, ground covers, flowers incorporated into the revegetation planting plan be approved by the conservation staff, selected from a list of approved species. That the proposed spacing for each plant or plant type will in general adhere to horticultural industry standards, which we've prepared. No mulch allowed within the restoration planting except at the time of planting under the drip line, which we're proposing. They want, the full restoration plan has to be completed by May 25th, 2025. Prior to the start of work, applicant shall convene an on-site meeting with the contractor, consultant, and conservation staff. Irrigation in consultation with staff. Annual reports. Number 12 is there shall be no cutting or mowing beyond the fence. 13, failure to meet any deadlines listed above result in issuance of additional enforcement. And clearing or pruning of vegetation within the restoration planting area is prohibited, except for the removal of storm damaged limbs that may impact newly planted specimens. So those were the two specific pieces that we were looking to speak to you about.
So my question then is, where in that enforcement order does it say anything about doing any further invasive control or management?
It does not,
And so why would we, that's what I'm saying.
because we're considering long-term management that's going to better protect the resource area, and that's what we're proposing.
I think this is where we have to draw the line, because I mean, I don't think
Well,
I don't want to see you doing any more work on town property at this point. I want you to restore it like what the enforcement order says, and then don't touch it. And if you want to mow your lawn, mow your lawn. If something grows into your yard, mow it. That's fine. But I don't understand why we are moving on to telling a private citizen to come onto town property and do continued invasive management.
My only answer to that is because they had an order of conditions with the support of the Conservation Commission in 2017 that encouraged them to do that at their expense. And they did. And unfortunately, they've continued to mow beyond the order of conditions, but they originally engaged, this whole project started with support of the Conservation Commission to do invasive species management. So now they're only continuing to maintain what they've done.
According to what I'm reading here, it says a restoration plan on 2017 was never provided. So with the work they must have done, I assume, was done without, you said consulting the administrator at the time, but
Yeah, there were conditions within that order that were not followed.
We
so
understand
that's
that. There were
what-
conditions that were not met. The area was supposed to be revegetated. That is true. And that was one of the issues, that the certificate of compliance was not issued because those 3 specific conditions were not met
sorry,
from the
but
original order of conditions.
I went into the 2017 paperwork. There was a plan submitted that was pictures and text. And it may not have been accepted, it was probably done by the owner, I don't know. But there is something called a 2017 plan. Sorry.
Does it show?
Shows plants to be planted there, and the pictures, I don't think it has a map.
There were 710 plugs planted that were eaten by deer and rabbits.
Yes, yeah. So I'm
You're looking at, Jack?
And the administrator
back
at
in
the time
your
acknowledged
fish.
You just have to,
I'd have to,
come on up, Nancy. Do you want to pull up a chair?
All right, so
there you are. That's the original.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable plan? I don't know. They may or may not have accepted it as a plan.
Well, I have email messages from the administrator at the time it was accepted. And then we went over the plants, and the planting was done unsuccessfully with the 710 plugs.
Okay, and there is a picture of the plants that you chose, I think.
Yes, there is. That was submitted all to the administrator at the time.
Sorry to be murky, but
And part of that original order of conditions was ongoing maintenance to keep the invasives back. But again, that was I'll take full responsibility. I didn't realize I had to close it out. I thought it just expired, and it was explained to me, because I said, we're going to do all this work, all this time, all this money. How are we going to keep this back? And she said, you will have ongoing permission to maintain the invasives. So in my head, of course, it expired right when COVID hit. And then I never got a letter saying I needed to close it out until 2023, which is when I addressed it right away. So I take full responsibility. I'd never done this before. I didn't realize you had to officially close it out. And then that administrator had left, so we weren't communicating anymore.
Okay, so Joe, you're asking us to approve this plan? Is that what is that what we're supposed to be doing with this, or?
No, I think the question was whether we should request a new plan that has the fence and the contour lines, so we could better kind of understand that bank question. I think that's where we stand.
I mean, I think there is a bank there. I don't know if it really amounts to anything in the in the overall scheme of things. I don't know if that's, in this particular case, the presence or absence of a bank really played into it.
I want to say I have fewer problems with the fence than if they come up with a planting plan that's acceptable to Joe and Brittany. I just want to put that out there, that I have less of a problem with the fence.
And I would agree, if you propose putting in plantings instead of a fence, we would have to see a plan for that.
We did submit one.
You did with,
So that's what this plan is?
This
That's
is what this
you're
plan
saying.
is.
This
Yes, this is a
Oh, I see,
complete
I see.
plan.
Okay,
Yes,
all
so
right.
we're proposing to
Question,
plant.
David, are you good with this plan without doing the fence and everything else that's associated with it?
I'm good with this plan without the fence, as long as Brittany and Joe approve the plantings. I'm not,
So I could just go over the plantings very quickly.
I
We're,
would wait till she comes back.
okay, I know, yep, that's fine. I just didn't know if you would want to know what the plantings are.
Okay.
To be honest, it probably would go right through my head right now.
Okay, understood.
Otherwise, I'd like to see the contours too, and
Yeah,
I
I
want to
think
get a feeling for that slope and what exactly that is. So I'm just putting out the fact that I would accept plantings, doesn't mean I'd accept everything else.
So you want to see a revised plan? This is in general okay, but you want to see the addition of contours? Is that?
Yeah, and approval of the plantings by Joe and Brittany.
Okay, so at this point,
Me, I don't know about the
No, I
other three
agree.
people.
is that what everybody else?
Well, would this include the mowing and maintenance of town property?
No.
the planting plan that was submitted does,
Our goal is
we
to.
can go over that, yeah.
Our goal is to give the restoration planting a fighting chance. If we don't continue to manage the bamboo and the Phragmites that's regenerating in this area, we won't be able to get anything established. We need to give them at least 3 growing seasons to establish and get this niche filled in with native vegetation to try and at least hold back. I think we can get control of the bamboo. We're always going to have pressure from the Phragmites because the Phragmites is so significant throughout this whole salt marsh area. So I do think that, but at least we'll have an opportunity if we are able to manage while we're getting these plants established to get something reestablished in this bordering vegetated wetland that isn't invasive.
Somewhere in here, didn't you talk about mowing just once a year?
That's all that we'd be proposing to do, is mow once a year. We're not talking about mowing on a weekly, monthly basis. We're talking about mowing once yearly, because that's really all we need to prevent that from
And you're talking,
regenerating.
let's say we approve the plant the shrubs instead of the fence, you're talking about on the mowing on the town property side of the.
Just in the area shaded in blue, which is the bordering vegetated wetland area. So we're originally planting in clusters and groupings that will allow us to manage in between those clusters of shrubs without mowing any of the proposed shrubs or any of the existing native woody shrubs.
How far in do you think you have to go in that area of blue?
We're going to the, if the pictures are shown back up, there's a very solid wooded edge in that area where the ditch runs right behind it. And so yes, so you can see there's a solid wooded edge, so we would be mowing just to that area.
Just to the front of where the trees are?
I think in between right now, there's some trees in between. We're also proposing additional trees in here. We're proposing to plant red maple and sweet bay magnolia in this area. But yes, we would be proposing to manage, but then it becomes a solid line of vegetation, and we would not be proposing to manage anything beyond what was previously mowed and managed for the bamboo. Yes, so you can see there's a very solid line of vegetation. We would not be intruding into that.
I guess my question, do we have the authority to allow the maintenance of town property in this manner? It seems to me we don't.
Well, I think if they're couching it as a limited effort in order to help establish the restoration, then yes, we do have the authority to allow that to go on.
All right.
Whether or not we want to continue, down the line, that's something else we have to think about.
The thought is that, because it's pretty extensive. I mean, you're talking about 17,000 square feet wet meadow restoration. That's enormous in terms of, I guess you should be applauded in a way for wanting to take that on, but it just seems that it's a incredible precedent. certainly bamboo and Phragmites is not fun. There's a lot of it around.
Mhm.
But is this what we do? We just,
We did approve something over by Mill Creek, where a town, they had Phragmites on their property, and they wanted to also take it down on,
but that's a treatment kind of a method, though, not a mowing method.
Well, that's,
So that would be, mowing can be considered a treatment. It's not the best management practice for bamboo control.
I thought it almost makes the plant even stronger in terms of its coming back.
so I do want to be clear, we are proposing to do some selective systemic herbicide on the regenerating bamboo and the Phragmites, and that is that's what we were planning on doing initially to maintain. So the mowing for the next 3 growing seasons would just be to prevent and also to allow us to see any resprouting frag or any resprouting bamboo so we could treat it very quickly. It's, I mean, it's sort of kind of sneaks in and pops its way up, I think is, running from the root system. So I don't suspect we're going to get 100% control of the returning bamboo in one growing season. We're going to need a couple of growing seasons to get it out of there.
But the later treatment is not shown in your plan?
So what we think is once we do the initial systemic treatment, then we'll do a mow, and then if we see anything coming, we'd immediately treat it. That is shown in the plan.
That's in here.
Yes, it is, in the land management plan.
And that would be after the first year, or?
It would be, so we would treat, actually, we would seed the area this winter, because, and with the goal, and have it planted in May of 2025. Then we would treat the bamboo this summer. I think the big thing about this is the timeline is we're just trying to meet the timeline that's laid out in the enforcement order. And then I also want to make clear that we are required to submit under this enforcement order monitoring reports yearly in October through 2027. And so that we would then, at that time, if anything further needed to happen, we would come back before the commission with the proper filing for that.
But you would come back to Joe and before you did any kind of chemical treatment?
We have to, it's required that we meet out with the agent on the site before we do any work on this site. Yes.
But again, I mean, chemical treatment is a standard practice for controlling, and again, you would have to control it at least in order to help establish the native plantings, so.
Mhm. That's the goal.
But again, that would also involve the meeting, a site meeting with the administrator, so.
Yes.
Ed, you mentioned that bamboo, the best management practice isn't necessarily mowing. Do you know what the best management practice for bamboo is?
I mean, again, I'd go to that, but I would go with the
Truthfully, the best
chemical.
management practice for bamboo would be to excavate it, which is not going to be appropriate for this bordering vegetated wetland. So that's why the next best option would be to selectively treat it with herbicide. Yeah.
Well, I would beg to sort of not disagree, but in fact, there's a lot of digging out being done on swamps around the Cape that so, at some point, but this would be low on their priority list, I think.
I think so, and I would not, as a restoration ecologist and designer, I would not recommend excavating the bordering vegetated wetland, no.
I was gonna say, who are you talking about?
Well, mostly I'm talking about, cranberry bogs and things. Or places.
Yeah, yes, this cranberry bog days are over on here, and I would definitely not recommend mechanical removal.
There's so many different exemptions associated with cranberry.
Yes.
You can't compare, those are apples and oranges.
Okay, so what are we doing?
So what I'm hearing from the board is that you'd like to see a revised plan showing contours, and that's what you're looking for.
And the plantings, for me.
But the plantings are that's what they're gonna propose. You just need to wait till hear sign off from Brittany and
Right.
Joe. So at this point, you just need to come back with a revised plan that shows those contours.
Shows the contours, okay.
And
Are
then we'll
you-
come back for a final.
You can do that. Oh, you did,
review of
okay.
the project, or the plan, restoration.
I think Phil wants to say something. Yeah.
All right.
Did you have
Here,
another
Phil,
comment?
take my-
Do I have a motion to continue for a revised?
You want to make another comment, Ed? Do you want to?
Oh,
No,
sorry.
I just wanted to just clarify one comment that Joe had said when I was speaking. you had mentioned you want to see the plantings come onto our property as well, right?
That, to my mind, and again, I'm below Brittany on this, so she would have to weigh in, obviously. But to my mind, more planting coming onto your property is preferable to the planting plan as it exists now, because it gives us more buffer. But the contour would help us kind of decide what's appropriate there too, because.
I do think that would help.
So we could talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to that.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, so do I have a motion to continue to, do you need how much time do you need?
Do you know, they've already reached out to the land surveyor thinking
Yeah.
that this might,
I just didn't get his timeline on when he could come back and do that, but he said he could do it. So I can find that
could
out
we,
soon.
Or do you
a
want-
month would be good, yes, thanks.
So that would be, what's the first meeting in March?
March 6th.
March 6th?
Okay, fantastic.
Continue to March 6th for the revised plan.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
Carries
you.
unanimously.
Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, final enforcement order for Ronald and Nolene Servin, 22 Television Lane, unpermitted fill and resource area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, which diverts flood water. Joe, you want to give us a quick rundown on this?
Yeah,
can-
it's pretty simple. We noticed that there was this new berm in place along the road in their driveway here for 22 Television Lane. And looking back on older aerials, it used to be flat and had a couple of shrubs there. So this unauthorized fill obviously is going to change the flow of floodwater and possibly divert it onto neighbors' lawns. So we would like to see it removed and returned back to the original condition.
Okay, and so that's what it is. We just need to, you would certainly need to add a time frame to this.
Yes,
but-
yes.
So,
If you introduce
that's right.
yourselves.
Nolene Servin.
And Ron Servin.
Okay.
We lived in the property, we've owned the property for 25 years and lived there full-time for the last 10. I work out of the home. One of the main reasons we started to do this, and we have pictures to show you, was not because of the water, because we can show you what the water looks like.
Can we show, we didn't realize that you could do this, but we have
We
pictures.
have before and after to show you that there's no change in the flooding. The flooding's horrific there.
Before, and this is after.
So it could show you
Are
that the
these-
berm
are
did
these the same
not do
pictures that you're
any
showing?
difference.
Yes, they're all the same.
The main reason why we started doing it was because the people walking through our property and going to the back street is ridiculous, because the playground and the actual tennis courts are behind, are on the street behind us. And you can see, we have a big picture window. I work remotely from home for Boston Medical, and they literally walk by my place. We tried putting a fence back down out there behind so they couldn't get through. They just walk over it. So our only hope was to build this so they couldn't climb over it with their beach chairs and everything.
Okay.
I mean, so you could see where there is no change in the water. The association is working on trying to come up with some plans on how to get rid of the water. We're not encroaching on anybody because every house around us is a mansion.
Everybody
see
built
them.
up, yeah.
We are the lowest on the world
Okay,
around
so
us.
I understand why you're doing, what you were trying to do with it. It doesn't give you any special right because somebody's.
No, I
somebody's,
understand. I understand.
Trespassing on your property. I mean,
But it isn't changing the water. The water, all that gravel is taking our water. There's no question about that.
And as you can see, it's, on the pictures,
It hasn't really
there's
changed
a lot of
it.
water that comes in. I'm sure you've been through the neighborhood and it just,
I've walked there a lot and I've noticed
yeah,
that
and the
water.
two houses on, next to us are like this.
So as much as anything, I mean, if I can't do it, I mean, what do I do? Put up a fence? I don't know. Around my whole property, I sort of don't want to do that. I mean, I'm one of 6 people who live there permanently around.
so I understand what's going on with it. You certainly have done something
Yes.
without the necessary.
And
proper permit.
We apologize.
And honestly, I listened to what Paul said and I thought, well, then I'm stupid. Because we thought we were 120 feet away from the pond behind us, that we could do this. We thought you were able to do something that was 18 to 24 inches and ours is like 18 inches. We just thought we were doing landscaping. We were gonna put hydrangeas on it come the spring to build it up a little more. I mean, it was not in anywhere thought we were gonna stop the water from coming on the house. It's been twice in 10 years it's encroached on my property, the water.
I mean,
It's still gonna-
I think the photos certainly speak for themselves in terms of water management. So, again, I don't know how the rest of the commission feels. I think the enforcement order, because we have to move you forward somehow. The enforcement order is asking that you remove the fill and return it to original conditions. And I would say that we should give them a definite date of, say, I don't know, like June 30th.
So there's nothing we can do to keep it in order, oh, sorry. I
Okay.
apologize. Keep my mouth shut.
You could also we can amend the order to say it either that way. You either remove it and return to original conditions by June 30th, or you can seek permitting for what you have and do it as an after-the-fact filing. But I will tell you right now that there is no guarantee, just because you leave it and you seek permitting does not mean that you'd get permission. And you could end up spending time and money on plans that ultimately still ends up in the same place where the commission says, no, you have to pull it out. Personally, I'm willing, because it is only flood zone that we're talking about, I'm willing to give a little bit that way. I'm willing to at least give you the chance to try and permit it. Again, I can't without seeing everything and seeing a plan, I can't guarantee one way or the other. I'm not saying that I agree with it or that I would even be willing to permit it, but I'm willing to give you the chance to try that permitting if you want to do that. Given the fact that you also understand that there's a significant cost that's involved with producing plans and going through the permitting process.
So it means getting an engineer?
Something that may not end up in your favor anyhow.
Yeah, so it means getting an engineer?
You would, let's see, this would, yeah, because it's change of contour, so it would be a notice of intent.
What is the so we get an engineer and then present an engineered plan to you guys?
You would come before him with what's called a notice of intent. It requires the stamped engineer plan. Those are, they will be expensive. I don't want to, again, I don't want to give you false hope, and I don't want you to understand that
Yep. So we have to price
it's
it
a
out. and
significant
figure it out.
outlay of money and time. And if you're talking about that, you're probably looking at 4 or 5 months to get an engineer to even come out and look. And then another probably month to 2 months after that to do it, okay? To go through the permitting.
Do we need permitting to just put up a fence?
A much smaller permitting, yes, it would be far cheaper and far easier. Fencing in the flood zone, depending on the kind of fence you'd be talking about. Are you talking like a split rail fence? Would you be looking at that kind of fence?
I don't know, I'd probably match what I already have out there, and I don't think that's a split rail, is it?
No, it's, you can see,
Can't see.
Look at my
you can see
pictures,
on one of
maybe I
your
can-
properties,
yeah.
just a regular,
See, we have white
that's the
fencing that
white.
was just covering our,
Yeah, that's a little bit harder because it
Yeah.
it potentially diverts water also. And I know that's not your intent and that it doesn't look like it's ever happened, but you don't know what future storms could potentially bring, which is why we
Thinking about the
exist.
future, too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
That's
what we're looking at.
But that's why, we want these types of things permitted, is so that people who have experience looking at these kinds of things know if it's going to affect floodwaters in the future. So, but I'm sympathetic to your situation, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I can tell you right now that if you do a split rail, if you return the area to normal, to original, and you want to do a split rail fence, I'm ready to tell you can do that right now. Okay? That I can guarantee you, okay? If you want to try and do anything else, it's going to create permitting, and it may not go in your favor. I can't speak for the commission, and the commission can't really give you an opinion because we don't have anything to look at and
Yeah, I understand.
assess at this point, so.
Okay, so I guess what are we agreeing, that we'll get it down by June 30th, or I don't know?
Well,
What do we do?
That's what I'm saying. I think the commission, I don't want to speak for them, and if they don't agree, you guys need to tell me to shut up. What I would say is I would be willing to amend the enforcement order to say either remove it and return to original conditions by June 30th, or file a notice of intent seeking an after-the-fact filing with no guarantee that there will be any success. But you could do that by, I would say probably have to say by maybe August 1st. I don't think you're going to get stuff done much sooner than that.
We'd know by then if, we'd be working through the process.
So-
Yeah, if we give you until August 1st, if you come up with something sooner, that you can let us know.
Yeah, you can come in earlier, and if you decide to say, you know what, it's too much, it's gonna cost us too much money for no real benefit or no guarantee that we're gonna get something, we're gonna go back and we're gonna pull it out, and we're gonna put a fence up. Like I said, if you do a split rail fence,
And I'm just a little, if we get an engineered, I'm a little confused, I guess. If we get an engineered plan, there's no guarantee that you'll approve an engineered plan? Because everybody's,
guarantee that we'll approve the work. The engineer plan, if you get an engineer that will do a stamp, or you can do a professional land surveyor who can stamp a plan. Those are the only two people that would be
Yeah, you
able
gotta
to
get a
supply a
stamp.
plan.
so if we get a stamp plan, would that be more or less?
The stamp plan that's just for your ability to come before us to even have us consider it, but we could deny it. Even with just because it's a stamp plan. The stamp plan only guarantees that the work that you're saying and that you're asking for is a legitimate and meets the certain site-specific criteria. But there's no guarantee, just because you have an engineer plan doesn't mean that you would automatically get the approval of the project.
Yeah, that gets you as far as coming before the board, but as you saw with the previous situations, we can negotiate with you and talk about what we like, what we don't like, what we'd like to see changed,
So-
that kind of thing.
But hypothetically, if we present a plan with you, don't you, like what we're hearing in the early meetings, wouldn't you say, yeah, Ron and Nolene, this is okay, but you need to do this, this, and this to make the plan work?
We could.
Or we could say there's no hope for you.
Or, yeah, I mean, we could say, Ron and Nolene, sorry, Yeah, you made a valiant effort, but no, we can't permit it.
That engineer, as they're developing that plan, they might also tell you there's no way to do it without diverting stormwater, and that would kind of answer that question as well before it even came here.
Well, I guess my problem is that that everybody along us was approved to go up and, raise they changed the whole topography. That's why we have such significant flooding in the street.
Which is one of the things that was the impetus behind us trying to give a little bit more teeth to the flood and to floodplain regulations for the town. Is that because that's unfortunately often the case. What happens is, under the state building code and under the state Wetlands Protection Act, people were building up, but they were building up by either most of the time by bringing in fill, which then would end up diverting stormwater, okay? And that was one of the impetus behind us trying to give a little bit more thought into what are we doing in the flood zone. So, it's just not gonna be any easier going forward.
Yeah.
But like I said, if want us to do it that way, we can certainly, I think.
I think it's worthwhile for us at least to
Does the
talk
rest
to
of
an
the board
engineer.
agree? I don't want to be talking forever.
I just have a question. You know, I know there's, well, I don't know, I would assume there's a homeowners association over there, you know? And usually homeowners associations have say in terms of what people can do or not do with their property.
They don't.
They don't, okay. Because the reason I asked the question is because I was wondering if they did, if you had to go before the homeowners association, and do they bear any responsibility for allowing something to be placed like a berm in front of a house? And if they did, you know, maybe there would be some.
There was a
but-
time the association did years ago, because we bought the house 25 years ago, and it seemed like even to paint a color, we needed approval, et cetera.
I'm very surprised that there
Yeah,
isn't.
but I think over time, with lawsuits, et cetera, the association really sort of lost most of its.
But they are responsible for the road, right?
I'm sorry?
They are responsible for the road and the
They are
flooding.
responsible for the road, but they don't like to take responsibility. They're doing the best they can. That's what I'll say. They're doing the best they can, and they're trying to do something about it. And we're seeing some movement for the first time since we've been there, so I'm not going to diss the board right now.
Okay.
Maybe later.
Maybe in a year if I'm still sitting here like, but no, I think they're trying to do the best they can with the roads and with everything that's happened. But, you know, they had no control on the houses being built either, you know?
So let me hear from the rest of the board. How do you want to go with this?
I like the idea of, as you suggested, what was it, return it to its previous state by the end of June,
Such and such a date, or give them the opportunity to seek permitting.
Exactly.
With no guarantee that you would get it, okay?
Yes, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I would certainly go along with that as well.
Me too.
Thank you.
Yep. Fair with everybody?
Yep.
All right.
Can we say
Appreciate your time.
August 7th, so we're landing on a hearing date? Or do
Yeah,
you
I
want to
mean,
go
that-
back a
well,
month?
Yeah, go a week before that,
Week before that.
sorry, 2 weeks before that to do it, so whatever, 2 weeks.
July, what's the second, would be the 17th.
So you would have to file the notice of
24th.
intent by July 24th.
5 Thursdays, so the meeting would be on the 17th.
But shouldn't we file it
And the-
before
and the-
June
and the
30th? Because we're going to be holding off, or no, that's not how it works? I feel stupid.
We have to realistically give you a little bit more time because the engineers, there's no way they're gonna get out.
Oh, I meant we won't file the intent until we know what we're doing. Got it.
And a diagram.
And if you need help, that's what Joe is here for, and that's what Brittany's for.
Shouldn't say that. My husband would be at your door every day.
So,
Be the only one, so it's okay.
so listen to the motion. So do I have a motion to amend the enforcement order to order either by, what did you say?
July
June-
17th?
By June
Oh,
30th, to remove the fill and return the site to original condition, or you may seek to permit the work by filing an after-the-fact notice of intent with the commission with no guarantee of success by, what they say, July
24th is 2 weeks before our,
July 24th, 2025, by filing the notice of intent by July 24th. Okay?
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thanks so much. We appreciate your
If
time.
you change your mind at some point, you know, you can always come back and say, okay, no, we're just going to get rid of it and we can move forward.
Like, if we research it, can we just talk to,
Talk to Joe, talk to Joe and
just say, hey, we're gonna
yeah,
move it by June?
they'll tell you.
Email or call the department, I'm happy to answer any
do I
questions.
have a motion to that
outside of-
effect?
Oh, sorry. Didn't know.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Bradford's.
You have a
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimous. Okay,
Thank you
so
very
there
much.
you go.
Appreciate it.
Your picture back.
Speak to,
You can keep those.
And that's why you can have them back.
I'll add them to your file so that if.
here, you can take, we'll give you
But
two.
mine would be thrown away. I can't keep too many. I have so much paper from this.
I want to keep it.
Oh, yeah, I walk, I live over by Bayberry and Wisteria, that area, so I walk to Seagull Beach and down there, down the beach, and then
That's a nice
But then there was some work being done around the corner from you that I wanted to look at, and they putting in a new septic, I think.
Oh, all the way around.
Yeah, and it was,
That looks like a castle.
yeah, and it was hard for me to get around because of all that water.
I was shocked about that castle.
Have you seen him?
You mean how tall it is?
The
castle.
Well, I always wonder how they get around the 35-foot height in this town.
No, I meant the septic system.
Oh,
No, that I didn't
It
see.
looks like a castle,
Oh,
literally.
no, I didn't see
It's
that.
taller than me,
Yeah.
and it's all big bricks.
Want these
Yeah.
pictures?
Thank you very much. Oh, I'll take it.
You've been there 25 years? You buy from Tom Powers? when
Yeah, I
you-
bought it from Tom Powers. Yeah.
I remember those days.
Then we went and lived in Yarmouthport to raise the kids, because there's no kids over there. When our last kid went off to college, we moved in full-time.
Yeah, we were lucky to buy it 30 years ago.
I liked it better then.
Yeah, I liked it when there were all little cabins when I was growing up, but
That's why we kept ours small.
That's why we rented there for years before we bought. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks for coming.
remember when that place
Sign
was on the
something?
market?
July,
Whole
oh,
thing?
yeah, sorry, July
Yeah, all the-
4th, 2025. Okay, so here's the new, that's the new motion.
Yes.
All right, let's bring this meeting to a close with the approval of the meeting minutes for January 16th, 2025.
I wasn't here, so I'll have to.
I was here, I was fine.
Good.
I moved it.
Everybody else, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention, carries carries
Carries.
with one abstention.
Late.
It's 3-0 with one abstention.
No, there are 4. You voted.
You voted?
4 voted. Oh my God, man.
That's why I'm here, just to correct you.
That's what you're supposed to do. Amended.
Eagerly. I keep a track at home.
Order. C wording. And that was David and Bradford. All right. Any other business not reasonably anticipated?
What at this time?
At this time, you should be saying no. Okay, if there's no other thing, you all set, Joe? You got everything done?
Yes.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. We stand adjourned at 7:48 PM.